Evening and welcome to the Wednesday, September 28th, 2022 regular meeting of the Palm Springs Planning Commission. Can I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Elaine?
Here.
Commissioner Irvin?
Did you say Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Yes, I'm here.
Commissioner Hirschbein?
Here.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes, here.
Commissioner Maruzzi?
Here.
Vice Chair Roberts is excused and Chair Womack.
Present.
6 members present. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Can I have a report on the posting of the agenda, please?
Madam Chair and Planning Commission, our agenda was posted on Thursday, September 22nd, and our meeting has been posted in accordance with state law and city policy.
Can I have a motion to accept the agenda? I believe we're going to be deleting one item for the agenda. Do we do that now?
Yes, Madam Chair, the department would like to request that we continue item 2F. So this is the proposed density amendments to our meeting of October 12th, just so that we can have some additional time to sort out that recommendation.
So we're moving that to, excuse me, for the date, it's October 8th. So
October 12th, I believe, Madam Chair.
Oh, thank you. So can I have a motion to accept the agenda with item 2F not on the agenda?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Someone?
Second.
Commissioner Hirschbein made the motion. Do I have a second? Seeing none, I'll second it myself. And if you could call the roll, please.
Hirschbein?
Yes.
Commissioner, Vice Chair, Chair Womack?
Yes.
Commissioner Elaine?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
And Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Commissioner Maruzzi?
Yes.
Thank you. At this point, we are in public comments. This time is set aside for members of the public to address the Planning Commission on consent calendar and other agenda items and items of general interest within the subject matter jurisdiction of our commission. Please note that the Planning Commission is prohibited from taking action on items that are not on our posted agenda. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. Testimony for hearings may be offered at this time or at the time of the meeting. Members who would like, of the public, who would like to comment on item 1A, which is the consent calendar, must comment at this time. Are there members of the public who would like to speak?
Yes, Madam Chair, may I be recognized?
Yes.
Thank you. Madam Chair and Commissioners, my name is Thomas Boudreau, and I live at 355 North Avenida Caballeros at the Center Court Condominiums. I thank you for listening to us during the public hearing 2 weeks ago regarding the Dream Hotel condominium development proposal. The development really, or the developer, really had been listening to the neighbors in the past. The 2019 condo plans approved by the City Council attest to this, and our HOA supported the design and that ultimate approval. However, by Ms. Kibbe's assertion in the last public hearing, the developer is back in conversation with the city and that she is being required to add residential units resulting in both unit count and height to the North Villas and an entirely new condo development called South Villas. Mr. Priest confirmed her ongoing discussions during the last hearing, but no details could be shared. When the matter is discussed in today's hearing, please flag page 224 in the public hearing packet. You will see a David and Goliath scenario regarding the North Villas, and you can think of it as a Volkswagen Beetle being parked next to a Norwegian cruise liner. The line drawings that illustrate the building heights speak for themselves. Please study this diagram carefully and think of the residents on the other side of that wall. The contrast summarizes the primary issue at hand. Page 235 in the same packet shows a similar, though slightly better proposal for the South Villas. One section is stair-stepped away from the center court as you suggested, though the other section is not. You asked the developer to address building height in the revised plans. An approximate 6-foot reduction in height was the best they could do. All other impacts such as airflow, light, sight lines, and density were not addressed. The approved 2019 plans for the North condominiums have always been very acceptable to our community. A similar design for the South Villas would also be very desirable using the same eye toward proportion, stair-stepping, height, light, airflow, view lines, you name it. It all seems to come down to who the developer is currently conversing with regarding a finalized plan that will impact our HOA. And clearly the center court has been left out of that discussion. I thank you very much for the opportunity to address you this evening.
Thank you. Are there other members of the public who wish to speak?
Hi, yes, this is Mark Tarrant. I'm hoping to speak on urban lot splits. Would it be possible for me to speak when that agenda item comes up for the commission's discussion, or would you prefer that I address it now?
Yes, you can speak when the item comes up. And
Okay,
it is your choice.
okay, that would be my preference. I'll wait till the agenda item comes up. Thank you.
Are there other members of the public who wish to speak?
Yes.
I'll speak. I'm Louis Barinello. I'm president of the HOA of Center Court. Once again, I thank the commissioners for listening to our concerns at the last meeting, and I hope you received the communication that I sent the day after the last meeting, thanking you for your attentiveness. We still share tremendous concerns about not only what is proposed, but the process. We did have an opportunity late last night to review the revised plans. I am quite concerned that the condo development on the southeast section, which was not in the original plan, and that's being proposed, as was stated publicly, because the Dream Developer development lost millions of dollars with the previous contractor. That's not our issue. From our south building to the building on the southwest condos and the Dream Prop luxury condos, 80 feet. 80 feet is nothing. The north building, the north complex, I couldn't determine how far those condos that were originally one story, that somehow over the last few years morphed into multi-stories. I couldn't determine how far that is from our back wall, but certainly it appears to be very close, probably 80 feet or less. That is a grave concern to us. Again, process. We had no input into that process. The other issue that greatly disturbs me, at the last meeting, the developer indicated that there would be view corridors. I put that in quotes, view corridors. So Center Court Complex, which has been in that property since 1978, has lost all of its views except for a couple of feet on either side of the hotel and in the middle of the hotel. That is certainly, I don't think anybody would label that a view corridor if you wanted to go and enjoy a view where you have to stretch your neck and then to look over multi-story buildings with just feet apart. I implore the commissioners to really examine the impact not only on the community, but particularly on our small complex in the middle of Palm Springs that has been there since 1978, that is now going to have its views completely obstructed by the hotel, which we went along with. As I said at the last meeting, the developer was sensitive to many of our needs. The north condos, which were proposed and then modified, We had no input into that, and they're now multi-stories. Don't know how that happened. But now the south also was going to be completely blocked because there was millions of dollars lost, and then and funds have to be generated. That clearly is not our fault, and we will be punished permanently by having all of our views blocked, every single one. So once again, I thank the Planning Commission commissioners to listening to our concerns, and appreciate any action you could take that would be sensitive to our needs and not the 5-story hotel needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other members of the public who wish to speak?
Yes, I do. Hello. Yep. My name's Craig. I'm getting a lot of feedback.
Okay.
Sorry about that. My name is Craig Withercombe. I also live at Center Court, and my wife and I purchased a little over a year ago. And as soon as we looked at the condo, and we decided that we were interested, the first thing we did, we went down to City Hall, went to the planning department, and we asked to find out what was going on in this empty lot. They told us, they showed us the plans. They were very gracious, treated us very well. And we purchased based upon what those plans look like as of that day. And the fact that they're going to change is very discouraging. You know, we purchased in Palm Springs. I'm from back east. We purchased in Palm Springs because Palm Springs has a certain character and a vibe to it. And it's unlike any other city that I've discovered in California. And the reason it has that it has a very unique look. And I feel that you could lose that very quickly, and it would become like any other city in California if these type of exceptions are allowed, because where does it end? Someone wants to build it higher now, then everyone's going to get to that height. Then someone's going to ask for additional height. And then where you're at, you're going to lose the character of Palm Springs pretty quickly, and you'll never recover it. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other members of the public who wish to speak?
Madam Chair, yes, could I ask for clarification really quickly, though? Are you going to allow also public comment on the item after the developer has presented the changes?
No, the public comment would come before that.
Okay, so we haven't seen the changes or the
Actually,
presentation.
no, we will allow comment. We would get the staff report, and then the developer would present. They would have 3 or 10 minutes, and you'll have time. So if you hold your testimony, that's fine.
I will. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
My name is Ed, we just actually purchased our condo. It's an east-west facing unit 1 at Center Court. We just purchased in June. We were made aware of the development next door, and via our lens, west looking towards the mountains, there is going to be impact, but our setback is not the proposed 100 feet, but the 100 feet plus the entire length of the Center Court. So for our side, the west-facing mountain view is going to be encroached upon, but we were aware of that. I think the thing that I wanted to speak to is what I perceived as a misrepresentation in the last meeting. I think that the developer architect was speaking at that point, and he made a point to say that Center Court has an internal focus in terms of its views. I actually had the privilege of going to one of the other units. My east-west facing unit is a single story, but there's some construction happening on the south side of the complex in one of the 2-story units looking directly out over the Dream Hotel development. So what I observed in taking a walk through in that property was simply this, and it's double-edged, is that the construction of the building has little pop-outs in the windows that are set up specifically to enjoy the scenery. There are balconies. The misrepresentation was also that via the developers and architects' lens that the condos that are going in the southeast corner of the development that they weren't real concerned about the views because the current center court property owners are looking out over driveways and carports. That is not true, especially for our owners with the second stories. Please forgive me that I don't know all of the protocols in this, but perhaps I think this is going to Kathy Wermet, if I'm saying that correctly. I remember you mentioned in the last meeting the possibility of putting flags in place, something that would indicate precisely the setback and height of what's being proposed. That would be real helpful in terms of some kind of a visual cue so we can see what we're up against. Thank you very much for taking my comments and allowing me to participate.
Thank you.
Could I comment, please?
Yes.
My husband and I live in Center Court condos, and we
Can you
attended.
identify yourself, please?
Chris Sutton.
Thank you.
Unit 3. We attended a meeting called by the woman developer in August, and I raised a question about the sight lines. And at the meeting, she said that the northwest building, it would not be higher than 42 feet. And since then, my understanding is that the latest version is going to be much taller. She also offered access to studies they did of sight lines, and I tried to contact her, was unsuccessful, so I don't know if those studies exist or not. So my major concern, aside from the impact, the visual and the living impact of this big development, is I feel that listening to other comments, that there's a lot of disingenuous statements being made by the developer. So I just would appreciate your consideration of that. Thank you.
This is Don Burkett. I'm unit number 17, in Center Court Club. And I'd just like to say the same sort of thing. I'm very concerned about the process here. I don't understand the process that's going on. There seems to be a lot of information coming to us very late in this whole situation where we seem to have to react to this. We asked for years for assistance from the city to help us get this project back going. And it's now been changed drastically. All four sides of our property are now being impacted by the buildings that have gone up around us. The Soul across the street, which is also a 3-story or 4-story building. We've got now surrounding our property, 4-story properties, plus a hotel that's 5 stories tall. So I think we've got to take a look at this and understand what's going on. And I'm really having a hard time understanding how this process has been done so quickly. We were asking for years to get this done. And now within weeks, we're getting very short notice of what has to happen. A lot of times, just a couple of days for us to react and give information back. So I am concerned about what's happening and the speed that this has been going on.
I see a hand up from Chris Anderson. Are you present?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the Planning Commission and staff. My name is Chris Anderson, and I am a full-time resident in Palm Springs. While we've seen an increase in new development in recent years, the timeline to go from roads to rooftops is complex and costly. In fact, I recall a former Mayor Pro Tem stating several years ago that we were experiencing a very historic renaissance, and it wasn't happening by accident. It was happening because we were working really hard to encourage people to invest in our city. As a property owner, I have seen values climb significantly in my neighborhood and largely attribute that increase to newly constructed homes and mixed-use development being built in the last 10 years. My current home sat across the street from vacant land until 2015, when 18 new homes were built on it. Undoubtedly, the residents of Center Court and Ventanas del Sol have witnessed a significant increase in their homes' respective values over the same period, as the vacant land that once surrounded them is now home to the residents at Sol, the Morrison, Palomino, and Alejo Vista. I'm proud our city has made great progress in recent years in terms of this growth and development, and I commend the efforts and the vision of this body and developers like Ms. Kibbe. When I moved here 20 years ago, my peers laughed and accused me of moving to a stodgy retirement community. I'm now 51, and the only new hotels I can recall being built in the last 20 years have been the Arrive and the Rowan. We're well primed for a destination hotel, and I would hate to see the progress of the Dream Hotel and Residences stall at a point when demand for such a product has never been higher. I'm confident this growth will continue to increase the quality of life for all residents and visitors, and respectfully request the Planning Commission approve the Dream Hotel revised plans. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Planning Director Hadwin, are there any other members of the public who wish to speak?
I see none at this time, Madam Chair.
There being no additional members of the public who wish to speak, the public hearing is closed. I want to thank everyone who participated. And I'm going to move forward with the consent calendar. We have one item in front of us, the approval of the minutes of July 27th, 2022 study session minutes. There had been issues with this the last time. Has everyone reviewed it, and is there a motion to approve?
I reviewed it and have no comments. I think they were all handled, so I have a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Can you call the roll, please?
Rosie,
Yes.
Commissioner Leon,
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin,
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Hirschbein,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Chairwoman.
Yes, thank you. The second item is a public hearing. It is Secondary Source Productions LLC, doing business as Reforma Palm Springs, requesting an approval of an amendment to a recently approved conditional use permit for a nightclub cocktail lounge at the J.W. Robinson's Building, a Class 1 historic site located at 333 South Palm Canyon Drive. Can I have a staff report, please?
Yes, good evening, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Let me share my screen a moment for a summary of this project. So Reforma Palm Springs is going to be a new tenant in 333 South Palm Canyon Drive, which all of us know as the beautiful Robinson's department store building. This is an image of it. There'll be a middle part of the building as you're looking at it here from the Palm Canyon frontage. An aerial view shows this project and the site in context. This is within the south end of the Central Business District. There are primarily retail and commercial uses to the north and south, residential and hotel uses to the west. The Museums, Architecture and Design Center is, of course, to the east, in the Santa Fe Federal building. This is a site plan, and I want to just point out briefly, the area that we're talking about tonight is this area of dark gray. The previously approved conditional use permit for this project is this area here in the middle of the building. Impala Grill is a recent tenant that's finishing their TI here in the northeast corner. And of course, Bevmo and Orange Theory Fitness occupy the balance of the building toward the south half of it. This is a detail showing the existing previously approved tenant space, which you see here on the left side in the middle of this image. This little area that is highlighted in blue is the portion of the addition that is the expansion of the nightclub use, and that is the subject of tonight's CUP amendment. The rest of this area that you see, which is shown here in the enlarged drawing here on the right, shows that the balance of the space is primarily storage, offices, conference room, and restroom facilities for the use. On the back side of the building, there is a parking lot, landscaping, and as I note here on this screen, there is no exterior change proposed. There will be no additional doors or openings brought onto the west side of the project. The proposed use and hours has also not changed. This is a casual bar, table seating, stand-up room. It's a restaurant, nightclub, and cocktail lounge use. Their hours of operation are not changing, as you see below. This is what was previously approved back in April of this year when the commission considered this CUP. That's the end of my slides, so let me stop sharing if I can. Okay, so essentially what we're looking at here is an amendment to a previously approved CUP. The 3,600 square feet that is the area that they are proposing to occupy is an additional unused tenant space that became available in the building when the Impala Grill took tenancy in the northeast corner. So it was an opportunity for this applicant to provide some of this back of house area that they badly needed as they were beginning to look further into their operational use for the facility. In your staff report, the analysis and the findings for the CUP can be found on page 3, and we have made affirmative findings on all of the detailed conditions that are required for approval of this CUP. I want to go now just for a minute to the conditions of approval on this project. I've included for your consideration and review the original resolution and conditions of approval that you imposed on this project back in April. And I just want to highlight a couple of things that may be of interest to you. First of all, as I mentioned, the hours of use for this area that is part of the amendment will be the same hours of use for the main part of the tenant space that's already been approved. There are also conditions of approval that were imposed on the original CUP, which I have brought forward for this CUP. And I want to just highlight a couple of them. And I'm now looking at the conditions of approval that are part of the draft resolution. On page 4, we've confirmed the hours of operation. On page 5 of the conditions of approval, there are a series of items regarding noise control, sound limitation, exterior sound monitoring, control of low frequency noise, and so on. Furthermore, the one item that's important to note, since the parking lot on this particular property is on the west side, it's the area that is the buffer, if you will, between the building itself and the adjacent hotel uses to the west. I want to bring your attention to planning condition of approval number 17. The applicant shall post signs inside the tenant space at the west side doors denoting emergency exit only to discourage patrons, from routinely using those doors and leaving the premises. They intend to have the occupants and the patrons of this facility use the Palm Canyon Drive frontage. There is another item I want to bring to your attention. Bear with me a minute while I find this one. And it has to deal with control and management of the people as they're exiting the building. There is a security plan. I'm going to see if I can find it here as I'm talking and looking at the same time. But there is a security plan that was part of the conditions, and it will require that the applicant have a security management plan that will be approved by the police department. And part of what they have already committed with their original CUP is that they will be monitoring that west side parking lot during the time that they are going through closing, so that their patrons leave the site and don't loiter and cause a nuisance with laughing and kidding around as they're leaving the space. So again, the findings for the CUP have been affirmatively made. There is a strong set of conditions of approval to mitigate and control any potential adverse impacts of the use, and staff is recommending approval subject to those conditions. The applicant is here, and I am available to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Are there questions of staff from the commission? I see none. I had one question, which was regarding the conference room, and that's possibly for the applicant. Is that intended also as private dining?
Rob, do you want to answer that?
Sure, I can answer that. Thank you for having me here tonight. No, the conference room is purely for business purposes. The entirety of the office space, as well as the storage space that surrounds the extension of the what we call the venue, all of that is not accessible to customers.
And my second question is just, if patrons are going to exit on Palm Canyon, but park in the parking lot behind, how will you get them there? And how will you, the concern I have is quietness in the parking area for the nearby hotels and residences.
Sure. Well, as originally planned, the idea was that everyone does exit the space to the east through the doors on Palm Canyon, and anyone who has parked would need to walk down Baristo to the parking lot and then get their car and exit that way. We did commit to having a security guard in the parking lot who would stay until all the cars had left, which was requested by the hotels from a noise perspective, but also with our experience over on Arenas Road, we want a security guard there to make sure that everyone is safe. That is not the only security guard. So the event or the venue is staffed by a team of security guards. So we will have people who will see people to the exits and can ensure that, there's not, I think the way that Ken described it, joking around on the way out. We just want to get everybody out as quickly as possible to their cars and then exit the venue.
Ken, the applicants made that as they've offered that, but I don't see it in the conditions. Is there a way? I thought we were going to see it in the security plan, but we don't have a security plan as of right now.
We don't have the actual security plan, but it's identified in the conditions of approval on the bottom of page 5, POL condition number 2. The applicant shall develop a security plan for the operation of the business that shall be reviewed and approved by the police department.
What I don't see is a security guard which the applicant committed to us before, is having a security guard in the parking lot. And they've said they would. I'm correct that you said you would do that. Is it possible to include that in PLN 1?
Or POL 2. Either one we can do so. At the bottom of POL 2, a security provisions shall be included for Thursday nights as well. But we will make that a provision of one of those POL conditions.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? I haven't opened the public hearing yet. There being no other questions, the applicant, you have 10 minutes to present.
Thank you. Ken and I spoke a little bit earlier, and talked about the presentation. It was really just intended that if there was anything that I wanted to emphasize or add to what Ken had stated. So I'll keep it relatively brief because we really did a fairly thorough job of presenting this project when we got the original conditional use permit. So I think the only thing that I'll really emphasize is that when we saw that Impala Grill was only going to take half of the tenant space next to us, we did recognize that we just from experience over at Chill Bar, we recognized that storage space is always in short supply. And because we have the two venues, our business has expanded to really be a hospitality management company. So we did need the office space as well. So the way that the space is designed is that the storage and the office space do serve as a buffer for any noise, to the surrounding community. So we really have, pretty much like the maximum buffer that you could find in a space like this. And in addition, even though the building is between us and Impala and to some degree Bevmo is a building that is active at night. The doors on the back are now intended for office use, and so you won't actually have any public going in and out of those doors outside of regular business hours, meaning 9 to 5. So I think it's actually a really good win for the community.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak? Seeing none, you have 3 minutes.
I'm sorry, Chair.
Yes.
If I may, David Powell, I run the Small Chamber of Commerce. I think this is a good plan. I think based on the history that Mr. Gasecki has done with his other business, he and his partners, I think that I cannot imagine he would not be running it in the same manner to be aware of all issues, both in the neighborhood and in the business. So I would encourage Planning Commission to move forward as they see fit, but to endorse this project.
Thank you. Are there other members of the public who wish to speak? Seeing none, you have a moment for rebuttal.
I'll yield my time.
And are there any members of the commission who would like to ask the applicant any questions? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed. The matter is before the commission, and to expedite this, I'd like to make a motion for approval with the addition of the condition that Mr. Lyons suggested regarding detailing that a security guard will be in the parking lot, will be a piece of the security plan.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
If I may just insert at this point, I own property within 500 feet of the subject property or subject project, so I will not be expressing opinion or voting on the matter.
Thank you so much. Is there a second on my motion or any discussion?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Would you call the roll, please?
Chairwoman,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin,
Yes.
Commissioner Hirschbein,
Yes.
and Commissioner Maruzzi.
Yes.
Approved 5-0.
Matter passes. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Please invite us to the opening. Moving right along. We are at Douglas Jones, item 2B, Douglas Jones, owner in conjunction with SmartLink LLC representing AT&T Wireless for a conditional use permit to construct a 48-foot tall wireless telecommunications facility designed as a palm tree with associated equipment shelter at 2101 Sahara Road. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me share the screen here with you all.
Yeah, I'm gonna go take a picture of the car.
Are you able to see?
Lisa, she's texting me about what to buy.
I think we have somebody speaking that needs to turn off mute their mic. Chair, are you able to see the presentation?
Yes, we are. Thank you.
All right. So thank you very much, Madam Chair. This, as you read into the record, is a new AT&T cell tower at Sahara Road. Looking at the site, this is an aerial showing the corner of Sahara and Cerritos Road at the north end of town at the end of the runway of the Palm Springs Airport. Currently, there are 3 other cell towers that are on the site. All 3 of these are operating and are in what we call a monopalm instead of a monopole. And what they're proposing is a 48-foot tall monopalm, which is a cell tower that's disguised as a palm tree with faux fronds that are at the top of that hides the array and the equipment with the trunk that looks like textured to look like a palm tree trunk. The applicant has provided photo simulations, and this is what it will look like from looking south along Sahara Road. And you'll notice that there are other palm trees, live palm trees that have been added to the site to make it look like a palm grove. And then also the existing cell towers that also have the faux fronds on them. So this site is owned by Douglas Jones, and he's the applicant. They've maintained the site and added Palo Verde trees and a small low wall to enclose the site to make it more pleasant for the neighborhood. Once again, this is a simulation of what the cell tower would look like. This is looking towards Cerritos, and you can notice that they are adding 7 palm trees, live palm trees, which are the circles with the crosses in them, and they will be varying heights so that it looks more natural. They're proposing to add a 506 square foot equipment enclosure with an 8-foot tall wall. All of these cell towers need backup generators and other equipment to operate them. This is an existing photograph of what it looks like today, looking south, and the new monopalm will be of this existing cell tower itself. In your packet, you have building elevations of the height and the design of the monopalm, showing it from different angles. And also the applicant has provided what we call propagation maps, which shows the coverage of AT&T currently, and that is the red dot in the middle. You'll see that it does not have much service. The green is cell towers of AT&T that do have increased service. And when you add this pole, it will fill in an area that is lacking in cell service currently. And this is a photograph or a map of what the tower will fill in when it's constructed. So the Planning Commission needs to make 5 findings to meet the conditional use permit. They're included in your staff report, and staff is recommending approval, and the applicant is here to discuss the application.
Chair Wormack, you're muted.
Thank you. Are there questions of staff? Commissioner Maruzzi.
Can you go back, Glenn, to one of the photographs that shows the existing monopoles?
Yes.
I think it was the first one that you showed us.
Second here. Oops. This one here?
Can you go back? And back? All right. Oh,
the aerial?
Far. You went too far. No, no. There.
That one.
All right. Pardon me. There's an existing monopole that is a little bit to the right of the far left arrow. That looks like all the palm's branches have been frayed off. They're missing. This seems to be a common problem with these monopoles. Once they're constructed, there seems to be very little maintenance. And I've seen a lot of these so-called palms that look trashed, thrashed. And I don't understand why there is no enforcement mechanism, or is there an enforcement mechanism associated with these monopoles once they're constructed?
Right. So in this area of the north end of town, we know it's windy, and these carriers, it is an issue that the city monitors, and we make them aware of when the towers are not looking completely full. So yes, this is an issue that is ongoing, and the city does have a property maintenance and code enforcement has, if need be, gets involved. So you'll notice that in the conditions of approval, condition number 10, planning number 10, describes that failure to keep the crown of the monopalm full may result in code enforcement action or revocation of the CUP. So you have that ability in case this monopalm becomes a problem.
Does it have to be reported by the public for action to occur?
No, it can be, staff can, in this application, I notified the property owner that the existing cell towers would need to be upgraded or added branches to them, the faux palms. And in visiting the site, these towers are not looking as bad as others in the city.
I don't know if that speaks well for enforcement. And my understanding of enforcement generally is that the public has to complain before there's staff time to go and look at these things.
Not always. Staff can do its own investigation and that the owner, the carriers, keep them as listed in this condition of approval that the crown be full.
All right. Well, when we get to public or the comment time, I'll express my opinion about all that. Thank you.
Are there other questions? Commissioner Olayan? You're muted.
Thank you. I have a couple more questions of similar nature, kind of about the maintenance. One is that when I visited the site, I noticed that the palm trees, the real palm trees, don't appear to be maintained. They don't appear to have been trimmed, certainly not this year. Maybe not previously, or maybe not for a year or two. Is that something also that could be addressed through code compliance? I don't know the conditions of approval for the other cell towers, so I don't know if they were required to maintain the trees or not.
The conditions that are included in here are common conditions that we have used for other sites in the city. So they do have to maintain the existing palm trees in a orderly fashion, and if they need to be trimmed and maintained, staff will investigate that.
Okay, thank you. My other question is about the particular species of palm tree that's used. The conditions in the staff report talk about Mexican fan palms. I believe that those grow rapidly to much higher and much greater heights, such that they would no longer effectively screen the monopalm. And I'm wondering if staff has any reason or the city has any experience that would want them to not change this to the California fan palms, the Washingtonia philippa.
Right. So whenever we have these faux monopalms, the carrier expresses that they are able to get the fronds that look like a Mexican fan palm, so that or palm tree. So that's the reason why we use that. That species not always required, and we are open to other types of trees, palm trees that would be put in that site.
Okay, thanks. And then my last question is, in the last of, I think, the 3 photos that you showed us of the existing site, and I noticed when I was out there, one of the monopalms has either a pale shade of green or it has faded over time. The ones that are deeper colored green blend much better. Is the equipment painted? Is it a matter of picking a different color that matches a little bit better? Or do they come one green and nothing can be done about it? Do you know?
Being out there on site, they're plastic is basically what they are. So it's not painted. It's it's a material that is that's fabricated that way, and the applicant may be able to describe it better than I could.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Are there other questions? I have a couple, and I'm just looking at some of the photographs I took, which match the comments from other commissioners. We had a situation like this in the Indian Canyons. I believe we asked the applicant at that point to, one of their conditions was to go in and maintain the existing monopalms. And I don't see anything like that here. So I was wondering, is that something that we can require? Is this applicant the owner of the other 3 monopalms that are there?
The planning commission can add a condition that says that they need to maintain or so forth, depending on how you wish to go and which direction.
And then the other thing that I looked at and I shared with the planning director, he may not have it, the view from the view looking west, but on the east side of the property. And where they had put trees on two or three of the sides, they left that side empty. And some of the equipment comes above the wall. That I'm assuming that it's in our purview to require that they provide trees, shielding that from the neighborhood in the same way they have it on the other 2 sides of the property.
Yes, the application is before the planning commission. You could request that they add additional trees.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions of staff? Commissioner Irvin?
Yeah, I'm curious just how many, it's 3 on the property, correct?
Yes, this will be the 4th.
Do we have any procedures that are put in place on how many can be in one location?
There's nothing that says there that staff prefers that these could be clustered to provide a grove instead of sporadically put in sites around the city. So we are supporting the idea of adding another tower to this site.
But there is no set standard. I mean, there's no set limit that the city has put into place to say 5 can go in one location or anything like that.
In most cases, we could ask for co-location if a tower is taller and it's not a palm tree. But right now, adding one more would be consistent with our other sites around the city where we've had more than 1, 2, or even 3 on a property.
And Commissioner Urban, you are correct. There's no explicit policy that would that provides an upward limit in terms of how many of these can be on one site.
Okay, and so if there's any way possible that we can look into that to make sure that we're not just flooding an area with a lot of these towers, and also is there any way that we also can look and see how many of these towers are being in certain locations so we can kind of get an idea when we're making these decisions if there has been 15 or 20 on the north side of the town, or on the south side there's been 20. Is there any way that we can get like an idea of how many towers are being put up around the city? That way we're not oversaturating any area with these towers.
The cell towers, as we showed in the propagation maps, we know where for this application, the AT&T towers are shown. The other towers for T-Mobile and Spectrum and so forth, they're also on other maps. We've never had a full map of all the towers in the city, but we at staff know where they're located. They're usually located in industrial zones, which is north of San Rafael, the city parks and Sunrise. There's a cluster of towers at Vaughn's, behind Vaughn's, and then there are other ones throughout the city to provide service. So to answer your question, there's not been one map that's shown it. We would have to produce that ourselves. The cell tower companies are very protective of that information. We've had it.
And I understand everything that you're saying, and I just want to let you know that we don't know what these health complications are in the future, or what the cell towers have any effect. So if that's something that we can possibly look at, I would like to get that information so I can be able to make a sound decision on where these towers are being placed.
Commissioner Irvin, I may have the city attorney provide a little bit of information on how federal regulations speak to health effects and locations of these towers, because it is a little bit complicated in terms of how some of their regulations supersede our ability to look at these. So if the city attorney might want to speak to that issue.
Thank you, Mr. Hadman. Madam Chairman, the issue of electromagnetic radiation, radio frequency, and any of those other elements as causing potential health hazards, that is a federally regulated issue by the FCC. As a result, by federal law, that issue is preempted, which means that the city cannot deny a wireless communication facility project like this on the basis of potential health hazards due to EM radiation, radio spectrum, those type of things. The most the city can require is that, and we do condition our cell towers this way, that they have to be in compliance with all FCC regulations for purposes of EM emissions, radio frequency spectrum, the whole thing. But if they are in compliance with FCC standards and their FCC certificate, then it is a lawful cell tower, and we cannot deny it on that basis. The city can deny cell towers on aesthetic basis or other local conditions, but on the health hazards or potential health hazards of the emissions coming from cell towers, that is not a basis the city can use. That's federally preempted. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Miller?
Yeah, on that radio frequency note that was just talked about, alluded to by Commissioner Irvin and talked about by Jim Priest. Glenn, does the city require any preliminary radio frequency study as part of this application?
We do not. However, they do need FAA approval because of the height of the tower at the end of the airport runway. And they have gotten that.
Okay. Okay, just curious about that. Because I think the city, if we wanted to as a city, not on a per application basis, but if there was a regulation in place, which the city, I believe, has the ability to add, we could require that they submit a radio frequency study analyzing the anticipated effects in conformance with federal law, because we did that in the city where I previously worked in California, and it was not challenged. But it's apparently something that we haven't done here yet in Palm Springs. I would also like to ask the sheet L1, which shows the trees that are added. This alludes to a little bit of what Commissioner Alain mentioned regarding the species. It shows that all 7 palms are going to be at least 30 feet in height at time of planting, which is substantial. Those are substantial trees, but I do share a little bit of Commissioner Alain's concern about the fact that at some point they're going to be exceeding the height of the monopole, which of course is not going to grow. So maybe it would be better to get some variation in height on those trees as they're planted. And then another note on the sheet shows that the monopole is actually looking like a phoenix species, which is a date palm. Whereas on the next application, it is correctly shown as a Mexican fan palm, but that plan shows a phoenix species, not a Washingtonia species. So just a little bit of sort of accuracy in the plans. We were looking at a Mexican fan palm according to the staff report, and the plans show a phoenix palm. That's my comments or my questions.
To respond, it will look like a fan palm. It will not be a date palm because that's an ornamental tree, and that's not what is currently out there. So it will reflect that.
Commissioner Maruzzi.
Yes, Glenn, the other 3 monopoles, are those from other services?
Yes, there are other carriers.
Or other carriers? All three of them?
Yes.
I see. So the idea that, well, I guess we'd have to look at all, we're only talking about AT&T tonight, right?
Well, that's the application before us tonight. I think there's a T-Mobile, and there used to be a Sprint tower there, which is now T-Mobile.
Okay, so very good. Thank you.
Are there other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Glenn, and the public hearing is open. The applicant has 10 minutes. Is the applicant here?
Yes, Will is here. Mr. Kazemi? I see him on the call, Madam Chair, but I don't know, and he's unmuted.
I am sending him a message.
I've noticed that there's been a lot of audio issues with people cutting in and out.
Madam Chair,
cutting in and out.
members of the commission, could you guys hear me?
Yes.
Clearly? You guys can't, but I
Yes, can.
Apologies. I'm having technical difficulties. Give me 1 second, guys.
His cell phone isn't working.
Sorry. Could you guys hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. Just I want to apologize in advance. I'm outdoor, taking this Zoom meeting, public hearing. So you'll hear a little background noises. So just bear with me. I was trying to get my AirPods to fix, but apparently it's not connecting. My name is Will Kazemi. I'm here on behalf of AT&T. I just first want to thank you guys for hearing this project out, and then the next project as well. I have a presentation that I want to share, but I believe Glenn will be pointing it out. So if Glenn could show a screen, and then we'll move forward from there. It's going to be very brief, and I just want to talk about how we got here and why we selected, kind of like give a background of why we selected the site. Perfect. All right. So this is a presentation. It's briefly, so I won't take up you guys much time on this one. Glenn, could you go to the next one? So right here on this slide, this is our RF engineers, especially AT&T's, and mostly all the carriers. They come to us, SmartLink, and they're like, hey, we have this gap in coverage as Glenn showed on his propagation map, and we need to provide reliable coverage in this area. So they outline their algorithm basically outline a radius of where we should propose a wireless cell facility, and how to basically close that gap in coverage. And so anywhere basically within this ring will sufficiently close AT&T's objective on closing that gap. As you can see, the little tiny red star right above, it says CSL 04095. That's where the proposed monopole is going to be located with the other existing carriers on that property. Glenn, if you want to go next slide. Here, you can see a more overview of the search ring that I was just talking about in the previous slide, in conjunction with the other cell towers in the area. So as you can see, if you can see a pattern, the whole goal here is to have like a honeycomb, like I want to say infrastructure, so where all the towers will be communicating with each other. So this one right here for CSL 04905 Sahara, it's going to be located right in the middle where all the towers could talk to each other at the end, and then also to provide coverage in the houses around it. And right below it, to the south of the ring, there's another red dot. That's the next project that we're going to be talking about, and Glenn will be presenting in the next CUP agenda item. And basically, if you picture that on air plus that one on air, you will have this big whole green area of coverage for people driving through, people in their homes, for their internet, for the data service, and all the all the communications devices. So next slide, please. So my job is for AT&T is when they come to me and I need to vet a candidate out, or I should say location to propose a wireless cell facility, I have to make sure they're zonable, leasable, RF engineerable, and also constructible. And like Glenn said, meet all the regulatory permits and FCC guidelines as well. Next slide, please. What I focus on is when the gap in coverage that's presented in the propagation map, and then finding or coming up with design ideas that will be the least visual obtrusive means. We live in 2022. Everybody's using their service now a lot more, their cell service, their cars are wireless, refrigerators, thermostats, smart homes. These are the items that causes a significant tick in demand for these coverages. So what I look for is basically make sure the design is least obtrusive means. So in this case, the monopalm, we can't really put a water tank in that area because Palm Springs, it's a desert-like topography. So with palm trees is the only least obtrusive option here. So next slide, please. So we did also, although this parcel has a cluster of existing monopalms on site, and like Glenn said, it is ideal to locate these monopalms in a cluster in one area versus scattered all over, which makes things easier, and actually most jurisdictions prefer that. But to give a background on the alternative site here, as you can see from the ring that in the beginning of the slides, it's mostly residential, single family homes, and a church. We can't really put a cell tower, propose it on someone's backyard or someone's front yard. So this location, this parcel, because it has existing cell monopalms on this parcel, it's the most ideal and the least obtrusive location that we could propose, and feasible as well, because all the infrastructure, utility lines, everything constructible is already there for us. Next slide, please. So I do want to talk about a little bit of misconceptions about RF exposure, because I know during this call, a lot of the members, they voiced their concerns about the health aspects of it. And I just want to go briefly through it and to point to Commissioner Miller's comment about the jurisdictional the EME report. Although city code does not require us to provide one, AT&T very gladly will provide an EME report. That's not a problem to us. It'll show basically we operate way below the FCC guidelines and the thresholds for RF exposure. So that being said, I just want to talk a little bit briefly about it. I know the city attorney's office touched about how federal law trumps local law when it comes to wireless communications, and basically a local jurisdiction cannot reject an application solely on health effects, but the other conditions, yeah, they can. Like I said before, AT&T could provide an RF emission report at staff's request. At this rate, we'll go ahead and provide one. That's not a big deal at all, and AT&T will gladly provide that as well. Just to touch a little bit, I'm not an expert at RF radiation and microwave radiation, but I do know a little bit from my background in undergrad that RF and microwave radiation is non-ionized. So it means that the process does not break down DNA strands, aka does not lead to adverse health effects. Your cell phone, your microwave, etc., those are non-ionized radiation. However, things like quite opposite, the ionized radiation, such as X-rays and gamma rays, those are the ones that actually would cause, and I'm saying they would exactly cause them, but those will cause more potential to health effects. That's pretty much it. Glenn pretty much covered this. I want to go ahead and touch it again. If you want to go back to the first slide, you could, no, not sorry, the first slide of the propagation. My bad, my apologies. Right there. So right here, as Glenn would explain, you can see the gap in coverage. Now, when I mean gap in coverage, doesn't mean that's completely dead zone. It just means that coverage is not reliable as it should be. So you can see that area there's dead. So like if you drive through it, your service may cut out, your data might not go through. You can't load your Instagram or your LinkedIn account faster than you thought it would be. So that's basically how we found out. And that's where our RF engineers were like, oh, we need the man's over here ticking up. We need something in here, you know? Next slide, please. Here is basically the site as if it goes on air or turned on, as would say. And you can see the area that it encompasses. Ideally, a cell tower could provide coverage up to 2 miles on perfect terrain, perfect topography, like area like right here. You can see that's pretty spread apart, and it'll probably cover much majority of the objective. And to the south, you're probably wondering how we get to cover that one. That's the next CUP agenda, is where we're going to have a cell tower down there to help close that one. And once everything is up and running, you'll see this flood of green with reliable coverage. Here, as you can see, the exact distance it will go, the coverage, as if everything else around it is turned off and only this site is on air. And you can see how it'll cover basically, my scale is off a little bit, but about a mile and a half around. Next slide, please. Oh, that's about it. So that's pretty much concludes that presentation. I know I said it will be brief. I'm here to answer any questions you may have. My public speaking is a little off, so I apologize ahead about that one as well. Thank you.
If you'll stay available, at this point, are there any members of the public who wish to speak?
I believe Commissioner Member Morezi wanted to say
No. I'm asking if members of the we're in a public hearing. Are there members of the public who wish to speak? Seeing none, Planning Director Hadwin, do you have anybody who signed up to speak?
There are, Madam Chair, no one signed up to speak in advance on this item, and I see no one else raising their hand.
Thank you. At this point, it would normally be rebuttal, but if you can stay available, members of the commission may have questions of you. Commissioner Maruzzi had his hand up.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Are you familiar with the issue of these monopoles not lasting very long because of the wind and other issues in the desert?
I've been doing this. Okay. I've been doing this in this industry about 7 years. We have seen those issues come up, and especially high desert areas. But we just replace them as they go down, pretty much. Just like normal trees, just like any other trees, real life trees. And instead of just growing back out, we have to replace the branches.
I mean, I didn't have an opportunity to survey all the only AT&T towers around the city that are monopoles, see how they're faring. So I'd have to rely on you to tell us, but you saw the photograph of some of your competitors who don't seem to be maintaining theirs, but you're of the opinion that AT&T is different in this way?
Yes, I have. At least for my projects and the ones I've been involved with, I've always escalated any issues that may come up onto AT&T management to get it resolved. I strive to have a working relationship with the jurisdiction I'm working with.
But how would you know? I mean, once you get approval, isn't that the end of your job?
Correct. That would have to rely on code enforcement or any comments. I could give an example. Neighboring city, Rancho Mirage, recently contacted me. They're like, one of the contractors left their crane, I think, out. And on a Friday evening, I called everywhere I can and got it removed, hopefully by Monday, end of the day. So like I said, I can't speak for other carriers on how they do it. And obviously I don't live in Palm Springs, but I do rely on the city to provide that feedback. If something happened or if something's going on, then they would have to contact us. And then to add to that, at least I know for AT&T, their cell sites, they have a 24-hour number for the operations command center. So if anybody needs to get a hold of somebody real quick on in case of emergency, God forbid, then they could call that number and get a tech out or
Okay,
resolve an issue in a
that's
timely manner.
nice. Just to interrupt. So there's no AT&T personnel, once the thing is up there, you know, they're out of town, they're not checking on them regularly to see if they're.
They do. They have to because our equipment's there and they need regular maintenance, especially in the high desert area in the heat. So they're
Right.
periodically out there. It's on their job, it's their due diligence. And I trust that they would report if they see a branch falling or if there's something missing or the trees fading out.
Okay, I guess I'll have to, we'll speak with staff about some sort of enforcement for this as part of the provisions. That would be my recommendation, but we'll see. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions for the applicant? I have some. So you're leasing a portion of this property. Obviously, this is owned by somebody who's leasing it to previous 3 and now 4 carriers. Is that correct?
From my understanding, the property owner is a private entity, and they basically lease out, like, you know, how you have an apartment building, they will lease out space to the wireless carriers. So right now, AT&T will get into a long-term lease agreement with the property owner, and I would imagine the other carriers that are on the parcel currently, they get the same thing as well.
So if we are requiring, say we required slightly different palm trees, and we require some Palo Verde trees on the east side of the property, is that something you provide when you put it in? Correct,
because it's part of the landscaping is part of the scope of work for AT&T here, and it's conditioned by it was a request from staff, and we obliged to it. And AT&T is pretty open. We're not in the landscape business, so we're not arborists or we know anything. So if the city recommends a certain type of species of plants that they want to see or a tree, please feel free to let us know so we could put that in there.
So one of the questions is if we require that this be the landscape, the trees be continuously maintained, how do you deal with that? You put that in your lease with the owner? What do you
Correct. Essentially, the landscape portion of the work, once AT&T installs and all that, it will be the responsibility of the property owner. That said, the property owner and AT&T, when they get into a lease agreement, they have language. I'm not privy to this one. My colleagues are, but their standard language where the site that AT&T needs to maintain the site as it was, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, the property owner is ultimately responsible for the maintenance of the trees that are put on the property. So, you know, Doug Jones is a local property owner who we have a relationship with and can, you know, he ultimately, if there's a maintenance issue, would be get the notices from code enforcement if any of the towers are lacking the fronds. It wouldn't go to the AT&T, it would go to the property owner. He would have to alert the individual carrier that the towers are insufficient.
Right. What I'm looking at is the regular trees, the maintenance of the regular trees, the normal landscape. If we condition it with that, who's responsible?
It's the property owner, but remember, it's a CUP and it could be revoked. I mean, the property owner, it runs in his name. It's not AT&T that is granted the CUP.
Essentially, all the stakeholders will be responsible, ultimately.
Thank you.
Including AT&T.
Any other questions before I close the public hearing?
I have one.
Yes.
I just have one quick question, and I'm sorry I didn't do this ahead of time. Just to confirm, the Palo Verde trees that show on the simulations, they are existing on the perimeter of the site. Is that correct?
They are existing. They were planted previously as a part of another application.
Okay. They're existing on 2 sides of the site, not 4.
Yeah.
If I'm correct.
They're on the street side, so it's a corner lot. So they're on Cerritos and Sahara. So you're correct, Madam Chair.
Thank you. The matter is before the commission. And I've heard a couple of issues be raised. So the ones I have heard had to, one was an offer of an admissions an RF emissions report from AT&T, which they offered to provide. The other was whether or not this would be a Mexican fan palm. The other one was the condition of the trees and the which trees are on the property and the maintenance of the property. So
I don't think that addresses my concerns.
your concern was the fawns coming off of the existing
Monopoles.
the monopoles. So
Right, not the other palm trees, not the living palm trees, just the
so looking at this, do we have a condition that they maintain the fawns on this particular monopole?
I'd like to see that, yeah.
Yes, it's condition PLN 10. In your packet, it reads antenna design. Antenna shall mimic a Mexican fan palm, which could be, and Will can describe this, that's the cell towers companies understand what that is. The structure must be maintained with full set of fronds at all times. Failure to keep the crown of the monopalm full may result in code enforcement action or revocation of the CUP.
But that's not unique to this particular agreement. They all have that, correct?
They all have this agreement, this condition, yes.
All right, so that's all about enforcement, apparently.
So we have that condition. We had, since they've offered to provide a RF admissions report, I'd like to add a condition that they do provide that. Just looking at the other things that came up are the varying heights of the palms that are provided and possibly a different species. Commissioner Elaine, do you have a suggestion for an alternate species?
Yes, my suggestion is a California fan palm. Its botanical name is the Washingtonia prolifera. And that the 7 of them be staggered in height between 20 and, no, I would say 25 and 40 feet.
May
I and that they there be a maintenance requirement that if we can do for all of the real palm trees on site, that they be pruned once a year under the supervision of a certified arborist. So don't candlestick them.
Okay, so as we have, and I'm trying to make a motion, so I have.
Can I ask a question of Commissioner Land? There's a movement right now to limit trimming palm trees in the city to allow for nesting. And I'm just wondering why you think that trimming them is important.
Absolutely. I'm intentionally not being specific about how it's pruned, whether or not you leave a skirt or a beard on. But what you do need to remove is all the droops of the seeds.
Because?
The filaments. Because they drop and they spread baby palm trees like wildfire. They are messy nuisance. If you take a look at the photos of the existing palms that are there that have not been pruned, you can leave the skirts on them or the beards on them, which does provide for nesting, but you do need to take off the filaments and the fruit.
Is it a fire hazard? Is that what you're saying?
It's not just typically, as long as they don't drop as close to the ground as a teenager with a Bic lighter can reach, then it does not become a fire problem.
Commissioner Hirschbein, the other portion of that is if you do trim only in late August. after nesting season is over, so you can add that in terms of trim time.
There's actually different pruning times a year for the foliferas versus the robustas. Robustas, because based upon when they bloom and when they seed, the robustas are earlier than the foliferas. But that's why I'm indicating that it should be under the oversight of a certified arborist. They know all this stuff.
So we have 3 conditions now, one that we currently have with a fan palm, one to add the RF emissions report, the other is the maintenance, and the last one that I would like to add is on the east side of the property where there are not trees planted, to have the same tree and the same kind of distance apart formation to screen this from the east. And it would not be on the street side.
Madam Chair, how many trees are you thinking?
However many they have for the same distance that they have it on the rest of the property. Nothing more excessive and nothing.
Okay, noted.
Are there any other possible conditions that people are looking at on this?
I would just suggest that you might want to say a 36-inch box size or something so that we get decent trees in there.
A 36-inch box size sounds correct. There being no other conditions, that's a motion. Commissioner Olayan, do you want to make that?
With pleasure.
Is there a second? I'll second it. Is there any discussion?
I'm going to vote for it only because I think it's needed in that area, but the maintenance issue or the enforcement issue is really bothering me. But that's nothing I guess we can deal with.
One of the things that I would like to do when this is done is to ask the staff if they can alert code enforcement to the issues that we've raised on this. Is that something staff can do?
Yes, we've worked with code enforcement on issues with maintenance of cell towers. So we will let them know, and we'll also let the property owner know about the trimming.
Thank you. And it's also the fawns for the other carriers. The fading, both the fading and the missing branches. So we have a motion, we have a second. Can I have a roll call, please?
Yes.
Commissioner Chairwoman,
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin,
Yes.
Commissioner Hirschbein,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Maruzi.
Yes.
Motion passes. I think we have the same, do we have the same staff and the same applicant for the next hearing?
Yes, that's correct. So let me tee up the slide presentation for that one.
And let me just announce that it's United Methodist Church owner in conjunction with SmartLink LLC, representing AT&T Wireless for a conditional use permit to construct a 45-foot tall wireless telecommunications facility designed as a palm tree with associated equipment shelter at 1555 East Alejo Road.
Great. So once again, this is as you mentioned, a cell tower that's located at the current Methodist Church parcel. This is an aerial showing the overall parcel with the church towards the north end of Alejo, and then the current cell tower location is to the south behind a existing playground. Once again, they have provided simulations of what the site would look like. This is pointing to monopalm that they're proposing and other live trees that will be planted. So this is at the rear of the property next to an existing two-car garage, which is a maintenance facility for the church. This is a photo simulation looking from sunrise. This is the existing cluster of trees, palm trees, and the monopalm, which is currently here now. There's 2 at this site, and then they're adding a third, and there'll be a new cluster of trees around the new monopalm at the north end of the existing garage maintenance building. So currently, and I do have some photographs, there's a playground that runs along here that is used by the church, and then they're proposing to plant 3 new trees, and we can condition this also to be similar to the one we just discussed earlier. So this is the where the red X is where the new tower will be, and you'll see that the palm trees will be planted within the gravel area of the playground itself, and could provide some shade for the children playing. Height of this tower will be lower than the one that you previously looked at. The height of the array will be 45 feet to the top, which is consistent with other towers that are on the property. Once again, Will may want to go through these propagation maps, but you saw from his discussion gaps in service, and they have provided those maps for us. So once again, staff is recommending approval, and the 5 findings can be met. So that concludes my report.
Thank you. Questions of staff? Seeing, Commissioner Miller.
Just a note to staff, again, similar to the last plan, the photo sims show that Phoenix species, the date palm, are going to be planted, and the plans show the Mexican fan palms. I know we're likely going to change that now to the California fan palm, but just to take note of the photo sims are incorrectly showing the species that they even proposed. And that could potentially, I think, alter the way someone who might look at these plans feels about the palms, because they are much grander and more ornamental, as Glenn stated, than the fan palms.
Right, and commissioners, I would like to say that you did receive some public comment that was in your packet, and you received over the past few days.
Are there any questions for staff? Seeing none, I can open the public. I can open the public hearing. Is the applicant here?
I think Commissioner Alayan had a question.
Oh, sorry.
Madam Chair, I did note the correspondence that came in from a number of community members who were concerned about a few things associated with this site that did not arise with the other site. And in particular, they were concerned about the timing. And they wondered, could this be done such that it avoided season or avoided Modernism Week and things like that. And I wonder if we could hear from staff regarding I honestly don't know how much disruption there is associated with the construction of a cell tower. I didn't think it was that big a deal, but maybe the planning staff could talk to us about what impact there might be and whether or not it would be appropriate to add a condition regarding the timing of the construction.
One thing about these applications for cell towers is that they don't require grading permits. There's no grading that occurs. The site is level existing. There is obviously some trenching and some digging when they pull lines in to provide power. And there are cranes that will come onto site. They come off of the little spur road that has a cul-de-sac that runs along the church property, and they go on to the site. And so there is some construction activity. I posed this to the applicant, and he tells me it will take 1 to 2 months to construct the tower, meaning that approval will happen and plan check through the building department, building permits takes a few months. It may be the spring, like you mentioned before, it could be constructed.
Thank you.
Is the applicant here?
I am, Madam Chair. Do you hear me now?
Yes.
I was having technical difficulties. Okay, perfect.
You have 10 minutes.
I was going to do the same presentation, but you guys probably going to be bored off of it, but I can if you want. I could go over the propagation map as well, but you guys got the gist of it. Is that right? I mean, I don't mind.
I think we do. Are there any questions of the applicant?
I do want to add to member Island about sorry if I messed up your name, about the construction hours and everything. AT&T, it's like every other development during business hours. It'll be normal with sound when they build up the cell site. I don't foresee any significant loud issues arising from this project, and especially during construction as well. Again, this will occur Monday through Friday during business hours, or unless there's certain hours that the city wants it conditioned on, then that could be a normal routine as business hours.
And there
help alleviate.
There's no significant traffic impact, no street or lane closures associated with any of the work?
No, this specific on this project, everything is occurring in the back. I want to say the south of the church, all the way in the back in the parking lot. So even including our power or bringing power, it's all within the property itself. So I don't foresee any encroachment issues into the right of way.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any members of the public who wish to speak on this item? Planning Director, do you know of any members of the public who wish to speak?
We had earlier heard from a Mr. James Hum who might be present to speak, but I don't see him in the waiting room. So Mr. Hum, if you are present, now is the time to speak. And Chairwoman, just to flag as you continue, Commissioner Irvin has been excused from the meeting. He had to leave.
Thank you.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, Tom Embry, public, would I be able to say something?
Yes, you would.
Okay, thank you. First, I want to say thank you to Glenn McLaker, because I've been communicating and he's been very, very professional. My concern and my neighbors is we live north of Vallejo, and there's no shielding of the tower from the north. I also have question is the elevation from Vallejo was shown, and then there was a second picture shown with an X on it. The first elevation, I'm not accusing, but it looks like there could have been some photoshopping of the leaves on it. If you look at the two, they're different. If you look at Google Earth, it's not like the elevation that was in the packet that was sent to us. I see the current cell tower and just having a second one up there. I appreciate if you could do some shielding to the north. I only get one bar on my AT&T phone I use. So I welcome another bar. I don't, doing it is fine. It's just to the north. If they put up 3 trees for the residential area to the west, but there's nothing on the north. And I think along my neighbors and stuff, we'd appreciate if there was some shielding on the north side. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak? There being none, are there any other questions of the applicant? Seeing none, the matter is before us. What I would like to suggest is that we adopt the conditions that we did for the last cell tower, with the exception of adding the Palo Verde trees, and that we add shielding to the north. Glenn, would an additional 3, 4, or 5 palm trees do that?
Nice.
Glenn, the question is before you. I think you might be muted.
And you're muted.
Sorry, let me pull up the plans here.
Let's do it.
See where you're, and maybe Will can address this. So this is a Photoshop or an X that I placed on this actual picture today, showing the location of the tower. So it was not meant to Photoshop anything out of the picture. So there's parking here, which you can see in this photograph. So maybe the applicant can describe where there would be an appropriate location to add additional trees around the proposed tower.
I'm not an expert at that one. If you could go back to the aerial view of the plans, let's see, or the plans itself. Sorry, Glenn. Right there. So what I was thinking about, obviously we can't put it in the north because of it's a parking lot. We can't take up spaces to put live trees. To be honest, I would have to get with my landscape architect and the church officials to see where would they recommend another tree. But again, AT&T has no problem with it. If it's feasible, we'll do it. Because right now, I was thinking about putting on the other side of it, but that looks like it's a concrete pad as well.
If you put it on the other side of the concrete pad, on the other side of the garage.
Right there.
Yeah.
If there's room for it, yeah. Right now, it looks like it's pretty robust. A lot of planning already in there.
Is there any way to add anything in some of these planter?
I would have to run that by the property owner, by the church. They're very particular here. So I don't want to offend the church and make decisions for them in that matter.
Why don't we leave it adding three trees and leave the placement at the discretion of the planning director? Commissioner Miller?
Yeah, on that note, I'm not sure, and with all due respect to the gentleman who spoke, who lives north of Vallejo, I understand the idea of having a concern, but let's keep in mind this particular location is more than 200 feet south of Vallejo Road. So you're way into the church site. So while it'd be great if there was room that we could get some more trees added in there, I think understanding how far away it is from Vallejo might sort of temper the concern over that. Just a note about where it is in relation to Vallejo.
What if we leave it to the discretion of the planning director to add additional trees to screen to the north, if possible, at the discretion of the planning director? So we have the same conditions, the varying heights, the different kind of palms, the RF emissions report, and conditions regarding maintenance. Does that motion work for anybody, for everyone here? Would anyone like to make it or second it?
I will second that motion, Chair Wormick, with the understanding that it's going to depend on what can fit, if anything, given the tightness of the church site and its location far from Alejo. I would certainly motion it with that caveat.
And that caveat's perfectly acceptable to the maker of the motion. Can you call the roll, please?
Sorry, who made the motion first?
I'll make the motion.
You made the motion.
Can you call the roll?
Chair Womack,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Alain,
Yes.
Commissioner Hirschbein,
Yes.
and Commissioner Mosey.
Yes.
Project is approved with
Thank you.
conditions as noted.
Thank you.
At this point, it's 7:30. I would like to take a 10-minute break before we continue. Do other members of the commission, would you like to take a break? So yes, we are going to be on 10-minute break and then we'll come back. So we'll come back at 7:25. Thank you. We are resuming the Planning Commission meeting. The next item on our agenda is item 2D. Celine Palm Springs LLC for an amendment to the previously approved final development plans and tentative tract map 35236 to include the addition of 24 condominium units to the southeast section of the site, reconfigure the 12 condominium units to the northeast area of the site, and increase the number of tower condominiums from 28 to 29 units, and make minor modifications to the final landscape plans of the Dream Hotel located on the northwest corner of Avenida Caballeros and Amato Road. Staff report, please.
Good evening, Chairwoman and members of the Planning Commission. And if I can, real quick, I'm going to share my screen with you all. Okay, so can you see it? Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So, Madam Chair, recall on September 14th, 2022, this item was brought before you. And at that meeting, you made a recommendation to continue the hearing to September 28th and gave specific directions to the applicant. So my presentation is going to be very brief tonight. I will want to focus on those two areas where your direction was given to the applicant. So just a quick recap. So in that meeting, the Planning Commission was unable to make the appropriate findings relative to the heights of the condominium unit, especially the South Villas condo. So this Planning Commission directed the applicant to reduce the height from 52 that was proposed at that meeting by either reducing or eliminating the units at the very top floor. And the same thing with the North Villas, that the applicant to amend the design to reduce the height. The applicant has reduced the height, but without eliminating the units on the top floor. So for instance, the North Villas went from 52 feet to 45.2 feet. And the South Villas went from 44 feet max to 37.2 feet. But let me just show you some of the exhibits that shows that. So at the very top of this exhibit, you're looking at the site plan for the North Villas. To the left of it is the floor plan, and then to the right is the existing center court of the site. And on the bottom is showing the section drawings that shows the new height. So in this here, we show you the current height to the roof is 45.2, and then to the parapet will be 47.2 feet. The red dotted line denotes the height that was presented to you 2 weeks ago. And then the next slide shows also on this section shows the distance between the proposed structure and the nearest unit at the center court. All of these are also available in the exhibits that were sent to you. And these are the elevation drawings. So I want to show one more time what the overall new heights showing here. So in my discussions with one of the planning commissioners, I was asked to show a presentation of the previously approved condominium units at that same location. That's at the North Villas. In it, you can see that there are two sets of elevations that were proposed back then, the plans that were approved back in 2017, I believe. The maximum height of that building then was 25.8, as you can see here. This is the previously approved plan. And then the next slide shows the South Villas. Again, to the right is the floor plan, and then to the right of it is the existing center court community. And as I mentioned, the height has been reduced. The maximum height of the structure has been reduced from the previously 44 feet. And again, the dotted red line denotes the previous overall height. And the new height that is being proposed to you now is 37.2 feet to the roof. And these are the elevations, I'm sorry. These are the same elevations that shows the reduced height. And in the 2017 plan, these are the previously approved plans, which was a farmhouse. So, but to realize that the uses are different. What you have before you now is a residential structure. What was approved back then was a farmhouse for events, event spaces, and also a section of that area for farming. So there is a difference in use, hence the difference in height. However, the maximum height at that time was 24.2 feet, as you can see. Madam Chair, that would conclude my staff report. Again, this is going to be brief, given that you focused mainly on those two areas on the 14th of September, and those have been addressed by the applicant. The applicant is also here to answer any additional questions that you may have. Our recommendations tonight would be one, to approve the proposed amendment subject to conditions or any additional conditions that the Planning Commission may deem necessary, and recommend approval of the amendment to City Council for final action. So that will conclude my staff report. Staff is available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. If you could take your drawings down.
Yes.
Questions of staff? And at this point, Commissioner Hirschbein, I can't see everyone, so speak up.
Can you, Edward, can you put the section drawing for the North Villas on the screen again?
Yes. Just a minute. Would it be this one here?
I can't see anything.
Your screen isn't being shared.
Oh, really? Oh. Yeah. Yeah. What about now?
Half of the screen. You need, yeah, there you go.
Okay. Okay, the North Villas, right?
The North Villas, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So what was their, our last approval had it at 22 feet high at the edge. Where were they? Were they in the same location? Were they further back from center court, or were they closer to center court?
So looking at the, you mean are those the exhibits that you saw on the 14th? Is that the one you're referring to?
I'm referring to this section drawing here and
yes,
comparing it to what was originally approved. And I had asked that you show a superimposition on this drawing of what was originally approved. We don't really have, we have the height, but a component of view blockage is not just the height, but the adjacency to what's around it. So my question is, where was the original two-story building in relation to this section?
Yeah, so the 3 stories were actually closest to Center Court is that approval, and the two-story buildings were internal to the bigger structures, which were the three-story units. Now, I don't have the superimposition here, but
I didn't follow you. What I'm asking is, where's the leading edge? How close to Center Court was the last approval?
I can go back and review those plans and tell you accurately without guessing. So if I can go back. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because that's what I asked. Because my concern is, what is the proposed change in relation to the approvals, not necessarily what the proposed change is to the last set of drawings.
Okay. My understanding was that you were trying to determine the height of the previous change of the previous approval. So,
okay.
Yeah.
That's what I'm looking for.
Okay. So let me see if I can answer that question with.
And likewise, how far away was the farmhouse from the Center Court condos in the proposed Southville location?
Yes, okay. Let me see. All right, I can get those drawings, but it won't be on this slide. So if there is any other question while I answer those, I can go back and retrieve those drawings that could answer that question.
That's all I got.
Okay. Okay, Madam Chair, is there any other question before I stop sharing?
Chair Olayan has a question.
Okay.
Edward?
Yes, ma'am.
When we had some of the public speak at the beginning of the public comments, there was some mention of some of the surrounding developments and impact on that. And I'm wondering, can you tell me the height of Palomino and Seoul and the other multi-story developments nearby?
Yes, this is one of the Seoul buildings, as you can see on this.
Yes.
Yeah. So the maximum height on this one is, I believe, 38 feet high.
I'm sorry, how many?
38.
88?
No, 38, 38.
30, wow, okay, all right.
Yeah.
And how about for Palomino?
Yeah, Palomino, I could not retrieve the file, so I can't verify the height of that one, yes.
Okay, but that is 3-story, that's
yeah,
correct?
This is 3-story, correct.
Okay. All right, one of the other questions, if you take a look at sheet A 3.1S. Okay, at section AA and BB, both show the sight lines from Center Court through landscaping and to the buildings beyond.
Okay. So,
And part of my question, the first part of my question is that the buildings beyond are shown. The note says line of proposed building as of the September 14th Planning Commission meeting. So if those notes are correct, then really what is currently proposed is going to be 7 feet lower than each of those two buildings.
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
7.2 feet.
Okay, so if I'm understanding this correctly, if I am in either section BB or AA in Center Court, where there is a landscape tree, I'm not sure what the specimens are there, but where there's a landscape tree, you would not see the new buildings themselves.
Right. So the landscape will create some form of buffer, and that has that discussion came up that landscaping along that area, this portion right here, would need to be dense to create a buffer between this community and the new condominium structure.
Okay. So if the line of trees there was continuous rather than discontinuous, it would screen the new structures entirely.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
Are there other questions?
Okay, Madam Chair, may I stop sharing at this point so that I can go back and retrieve those materials? Okay. Okay, I stopped sharing, right?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Is there any more questions before I'm good to go? Okay, thank you. Mhm. So, Madam Chair, the applicant is present for a presentation or to answer any questions that the commission may have.
I think we want those questions answered first.
Oh, okay, all right, okay. Let me see.
And those really were our questions from the last time?
No, not the last time.
Last time we had asked for boxes showing all three versions. Nice picture.
So, okay, so perhaps this tent study would probably be the better picture to show you the location and the heights of the condominium structures on the North Villas. So, Madam Chair, are you seeing this screen that I currently have?
Yes.
Okay. So, Commissioner Hodgman, so here they are. This is what I was trying to explain. So these are the three-story condominium structures formerly placed here. And over here to the south, this will be the farmhouse. The center court will be somewhere around here. So it's not giving me the accurate read on but I can go back on my notes. The setback back then was 142 feet from the structure to the center court. So let me see if I can find another exhibit.
And what is it now? 142 versus what?
Let's see. believe. I believe it's 118, and if I may have the architect confirm that, but from what I'm looking here, it looks like it's 118.
So about 20 feet closer. Okay. And you keep saying it was 3 stories, but you're telling me the maximum height was 25 feet. So I don't know how you get 3 stories and 25 feet.
No, the maximum height of the 2-story building at 25 feet, the maximum height of the 3-story building is 37.9, so approximately 38 feet.
And the 2-story building was the one closest to Center Court, right?
Actually, it's 3. Look, it's right here.
Well, you just told us that the maximum height was
maximum
25 feet.
It says 2 stories in your handout. It says 5 condo buildings, height 2-story units, 25.8 feet.
28, and then the 3-story condos are 37.9.
The ones they're proposing now.
No, the one that is proposed now is 46.2. The 3-story building that was previously approved in 2019 amendment was 37.9 feet.
Where are those?
Is that behind the first one?
Yeah, right here. Let me see. There's another. Let me look for another exhibit that shows that clearly. Okay, so you look at this. This shows you where the 3 stories are at the very edge. These 2, and yeah, these 3 are the 2-story buildings. So yeah, you're right. The closest to Center Court at that time was a 2-story building at the very edge here.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's the one that's 22 feet.
It is 20.
5.8.
Yeah, 25.8, correct.
Okay, all right. And it's 20 feet further away.
Correct, by what I'm looking at. So I'll have the architect. I'm sure I'm looking at the correct, but I will have the architect the developer speak to that.
Okay.
I'm not sure that that's accurate. So I would like us to ask the architect, because I'm looking at the 2 plans side by side on my computer screen, and I'm not sure that there's that much of a discrepancy. So hopefully the architect can clarify that for us.
Okay.
In terms of the setback, you're saying?
In
correct.
terms of the separation, correct.
Okay. All right.
The buildings to me look generally to have the same setback from the property lines between 2019 and now, but I would want the architect to confirm that.
Okay.
Okay, should we open at this point, open the public hearing and ask the architect to give a report?
I was going to present. Are you okay with that rather than the architect?
That's fine. If we have questions, is the architect here?
He is definitely. But I do have some of the answers to some of the questions that were raised this evening. So I'll try to address them in the presentation. There's a lot of information that's been shared, including at the public hearing, public comments at the beginning. I had wanted to start with looking at where we've traveled through the last number of years, but I thought I would respond first to some of those comments. I live also adjacent to the property, and behind my house is an empty lot. And I think that anybody who understands that when you buy a home next to an empty lot or one that's under development, that you're likely to get a project that may not be what you expected. And the fact that views are not protected, we have, as a developer, tried to think about the views, though we know that we can't salvage them completely. We have, in the setbacks, tried to create angled views. We did that with the hotel. We moved the hotel back to 170 feet to ensure that at an angle from, and we did view studies that showed this, that at an angle from all of the center court, they had still views of the top of the mountain. I even had those views obstructed in where I live. And in fact, when we did heights, and we went up and looked at where you could see from the height of the condo tower, the only backyard that you could see into is mine. Everyone else has their privacy. So we all understand that development will make a difference. The one comment that I'm not available is absolutely not accurate. I have both David Powell, who's on this call tonight, and Lewis have my direct number. I've always been available if anybody calls me, and I'm happy to continue to be available to answer any questions. What I'd like to look at, though, overall are the things that we've done to the project before I get into what we have done now. Everyone was concerned, as I mentioned, about the impact and the shadows. So we ended up moving the hotel and the tower back 170 feet to ensure that the center court was not in shadow and that, in fact, they had the angle views. We agreed to a parking condition as valet parking only as a condition of approval to ensure that the cars entered from Alvarado and exited from Alvarado, thereby limiting the traffic along the southern edge of center court. We ensured that all the high traffic amenities of the hotel were located on the westerly side of the hotel. This includes two restaurants, a co-working, I'm sorry, I have a dog, two restaurants, a co-working space, and the fitness area all are on the west side, limiting the amount of noise and activity other than coming in and out of the hotel by car on the eastern side. We also separated the condo tower from the hotel tower, creating a large view corridor through what was one long building that sits just off of the corner of both the west and south facing of Center Court, where all of those condos do have a view out to the mountain through the separation of these two buildings. And again, we tried to lessen the impact in all of these moves. In regards to the existing property, the condo tower is approved at 63 feet and the hotel tower is approved at 57 feet. Previous developments were approved at the heights that you heard, the 25 and 37 and the 25 on the project, though they are of equal distance from the property line. The northern condos at the first floor, and all of the properties are tiered back. So we've tried to minimize the impact such that all the condo buildings are not a solid wall of 5 feet or 4 feet or 3 feet. They step back like a wedding cake. On the southern condos, at the garage level, which is now just 2 feet above ground level instead of 6 feet, which it was before, is 80 feet from center court and 132 feet at 37.2 foot height at the top. And on the northern condos, the distance from center court at the first floor is 86 feet 6 inches and 136 feet all the way to the mechanical, which is the highest point on the building, which is on the Alvarado building, not on the inner building, which is facing center court. We reduced the south condos by lowering the ceiling heights and lowering the garage into the ground more, and we reduced it by 6 foot 10 inches, which is, I believe, Edward mentioned, which is now a height at 37 feet 2 inches. And on the northern condos, we were able to lower by doing the ceiling heights, reducing from 50 feet to 45 feet and 2 inches. Because of the slope of the property and a number of other things, lowering the garage is not optimal, because we don't have the space, and then we might have to relook at how the traffic patterns are, and we decided that would be actually more disruptive. If you look again at the distances that we've set these at, a football field is 300 feet. So where the highest points of these are more than a third of a football field, which allows for an angled view, not an obstruction completely of view. I think that was very important to recognize. As mentioned earlier, Seoul is, we thought, at around 36 feet. I hear it's 38, and across the street is the convention center, which is, I think, a plus or minus 40 feet. So none of our buildings are out of sync with what is surrounding us. And I have a home in Palomino, and my height is just under 30 feet. I have very high ceilings, and it's a 2-story home. Let's see. We have, in the design of these, created these setbacks, and they are designated gardening areas because we have wanted to ensure that what view Center Court does has when looking at the buildings, that they're attractive views. One of the concessions that was made early on is that we would put in a solid hedge along all the borders of Center Court to minimize sound. That alone, if allowed to grow to the height that they requested, would minimize the views. It wouldn't matter what we built because they're only 1 story on the west side of Center Court. So a 10-foot hedge is automatically, which is right on their property line, automatically going to minimize their views, if not obstruct them completely. That was at the request of Center Court because of the concerns about noise. In addition, we have very, very intensive landscaping along the perimeter, again, through our discussions with Center Court early on in this project. Those have an impact as well. We think a positive impact on sound and the experience, but it also will have a negative impact on views that there seems to be a lot of concern about. Finally, we do believe that the 2 buildings now are completely in keeping with what we're being built next to and in the community as a whole, what surrounds us. We also believe that it anchors the neighborhood. Right now, there are a lot of empty lots. We have homeless. I deal with homelessness all the time in my backyard, which is a large empty lot, 2 actually empty lots, 6 acres of empty lots. And having this hotel built with amenities and with residences, we think adds a dimension to the neighborhood that's very, very important. I think that some of the other concessions that we've tried to do in the design of this project was, again, to continue to minimize the traffic. Both of these projects enter from Caballeros, or the entrance at Alvarado, thereby minimizing, like we have with the hotel, any traffic traveling by the southern condos at Center Court. We removed all the overflow parking along the southern edge of Center Court. And I think that's the key items that we've done. So that's my presentation, and I'm available and the architect's available to answer any questions about the project. I do think, and I may be mistaken, but I think that Edward will find out that in fact, the 5 buildings, the 4 buildings that we had designed were actually closer to the property lines than what is now proposed. And they did not step back. They were more solid buildings. There were 3-story buildings at the northern edge and 2-story buildings on the east and west sides. So that's my presentation in response to this evening.
Thank you. The public hearing is open. Are there members of the public who wish to speak? Go ahead.
Hi, Madam Chair and Commissioners. My name is John Fahey. My partner and I live in the Palomino development. So we're neighbors. I also happen to be a banker. So over the last 25 years, I've financed many developments similar to the Dream Hotel. And I understand why the additional residences are necessary in a post-pandemic environment. Hotel construction has always been the hardest type of financing to get accomplished. It's even more so now in a post-pandemic environment. Construction costs have skyrocketed. Labor shortages continue, and a recession seems increasingly likely. The dream can't become a reality with without the additional residences. From my professional experience, I can say there is no bank, no commercial bank that I know of that will finance a major standalone luxury full-service resort right now. It's just considered too risky. This may sound hard to believe given some of the hotel rates in Palm Springs, but the harsh reality is hotels don't make a lot of money. For every dollar a hotel brings in, on a good average year, 20 cents falls to the bottom line. Many years, nothing falls to the bottom line, or a lot less than 20 cents. So banks need to get repaid. And the only way to do that is to reduce debt. The residences that are proposed as part of the dream will serve to pay down the construction debt shortly after construction is completed. As a result, you have a hotel operation that has a debt load that's feasible, that can be serviced whether times are good or times are bad. Beyond the numbers, we see the additional residences as a positive. We want this to be a residential neighborhood. A conference center would have probably worked well, but we think seeing homes along Caballeros is more appealing, at least to us. And as Lori said, the development's lighting and general activity will help improve security in the neighborhood. We often walk into town to dinner and back, and it's a little sketchy walking next to dark, empty lots. So overall, we feel the development has the ability and will likely anchor Midtown and really establish Midtown as a true Palm Springs neighborhood. Finally, a luxury hotel, along with the sale prices of the residences, will likely enhance everyone's home value. Even in the desert, a rising tide is likely to lift all boats. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. The gentleman who has his hand raised.
Yes, hi, Mark Elkins. I live in Center Court, unit number 8. So while I appreciate, again, I think most of my neighbors and myself included, we look forward to this hotel being built. We do think that it'll enhance the neighborhood. I think the changes that they brought, I think it's half-hearted at best. I really feel they didn't really give much effort to it at all, to be quite honest. I think that it's unfortunate that they're putting all their finances on having to have luxury condos on this spot to be able to build the hotel. That's very unusual. I would say, I would ask you to reject this proposal and go back to what they originally had proposed to us several years ago with the minimal heights. Again, I think it's, this is just going to surround our complex completely. And while I understand that you don't always get, when there's empty lots next to you, there can be different developments, but I think there's a way to go about it. I don't think this is the right way to go about it. I think that again, it's just it's blocking our views completely, and it's going to completely surround us and obliterate any views that we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Yes, you're recognized. I'm sorry, I didn't see your name. The woman with her hand up.
Hi, yes, my name's Maureen Burrell. I live in Center Court, Unit 6, and I'm also excited about having the hotel, but I am concerned about the views, and I was wondering, could the developer put up poles so that we could see exactly what those heights are going to be in certain spots, especially the highest spots? Hello?
We don't answer questions in public.
Okay.
We're taking your comments.
Okay, sorry. But I understand that that is done, and I think that maybe that would even be of benefit to the hotel for us to be able to see what those poles would reach in height, and maybe even on those poles, a paint line could be put where the original was. And I also noticed on some of the drawings that there was large palm trees very close to Center Court, at least in the drawing. And is that planned? She mentioned a hedge that will but I wanted to know whether those tall palm trees, is it multiple or there's just one here and there? It was not clear for me just looking at the drawings about that. So those are my two concerns.
Thank you. Mr. Powell, you had indicated earlier you wish to speak.
Yes, thank you, Chair. David Powell, I'm homeowner at Center Court. Lots of stuff going on here. And so my feedback is I'm really frankly disappointed in the presentation again by staff. It seems to be inconsistent, unclear, and we don't seem to get accurate data. And that's basically been the case the entire time. And I'm really disappointed, having been a former planning commissioner in the San Francisco Bay Area. I haven't seen it like this. There are some comments that were made by the developer. So Ms. Kibbe says that, homeowners were considered through all these decisions, but yet there's been no discussions. You say we have your phone number, Lori, yeah, and you have ours. But when all of these plans were made and every time Lou or I would talk to you, you would always say, well, we're moving forward. You never said that there was going to be new development of residential units. You never said that there was going to be any of this height in any part of this. And it really is a disappointment that we are hearing this even over the last 2 weeks. There could have been, and I know you don't work development by public input, but this may be a different situation. We never heard anything from you in the last 2 weeks saying, maybe would this work, would this not work, that we could have given feedback. It probably could have solved a number of these issues and this feedback that we have here. The hotel, we know, isn't the discussion at this point. That's already been taken care of. Frankly, I don't remember there being 20, and there very well could have been, but to the city, I don't remember there being 2019 public hearings that were noticed that we participated in. I have 2017 that we participated in. I don't recall 2019, and maybe I'm incorrect, and I'd like to, maybe I'll have to go to the city and see the public notices from those, but I don't recall that because I also don't remember any of these changes on the northern building that it was so close to the wall, the property line. I do remember it being farther. I remember there are going to be bungalows that were going to be little meeting spaces. I don't recall them being 2 or even 3 level residential units there. And then we go ahead and take the farmhouse, which I know was pushed back for a certain point. It was going to be a social place and a place for weddings, and it was going to be farm to table. And now we're talking about taking all of that away to put in these units, all of those that are high and affect none of the neighborhood. Seoul is not as close to this building as Center Court is. None of these other ones that were just discussed are anywhere as close, are going to have the impact with us. Now I can kind of see the western view with the hedge that I don't recall being 10 feet. I thought it was going to be 8 feet is what you agreed to, but 10 feet, maybe that's better. But the southern view, that has never been a discussion. And to those people that have come in, the neighbor that you have, Lori, at Palomino, who supports you, and the real estate agent in the beginning who's been supporting you, that's great. And none of you are going to be affected like us. And we can talk about the sale of the house and how great the home values are going to be. That's fine. But we're concerned about the quiet enjoyment of our home. And we're concerned about also the last part is, you said 2 weeks ago that there was on-site parking now that was approved. I don't recall on-site parking. There was going to be some staging parking back when I last saw it in 2017. And there was going to be some staging parking. There was not going to be any surface parking there because everything was going to be subsurface parking below the building, and it was going to be valet. And now from 2 weeks ago, I remember hearing something different. So this is, I know this is going to be the recommendation from planning. It's going to go to city council. I'm sure we'll have to go and deal with relationships that the developer has with city council. And it's just, I'm a little tired after this many years of kind of being working, and then being shunned again by the developer to say, we want to do what we want to do, and we have to make it done. And yeah, again, whether she needs all those units to make the hotel, I'm sorry, I can't deal with that. That's not our issue. Maybe make less units. You're going to get a lot of money for those units. And this isn't accessible or affordable housing, except for new people who have a lot of money going into those units. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak?
Yeah, I do have something I'd like to add. Dave did a great job of many of my concerns, but the big one here is that we did not get notification of the changes, the amendments in 2019. I received nothing. And the way that these changes are being made, that's why I went back to the process. We're just residents. We are not professionals like the people that are doing the development and yourselves and the council. So there has to be a better way to inform us of what's going to be changed here. My concern would be that we go through and this gets approved, and now it's another adjustment where the height goes up again. So whatever is approved now will go up again, and we won't have any knowledge of what's going on here. So, that is a concern. I don't think anybody had any issue with the 20-foot height. 25-foot height initially, and no issue with the event space that was next door at the time. But now we're having major height issues where we're going to be towered over across our property.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak? The gentleman who's raising his hand.
Madam Chairwoman, my name's Craig Withycombe, Unit 6, Center Court. We also agreed with the original plan because I stated earlier, we went to City Hall and discovered what that plan was, and it was acceptable to us, and we purchased here based upon that.
On the height.
On the height, the original plan with including the height. And what I've seen appears to be going on. The presentation that I just witnessed was absolutely, as I consider, deplorable. My head is spinning with the slides going back and forth. It was not helpful to me at all. It seemed like what was requested, that there was going to be a presentation of the original and the height against Center Court to proposed against Center Court. That is not what was displayed. And just sliding through screen after screen after screen was terrible, and did nothing to educate me at all. I'm just more confused now than ever. I'm from back east. What I call this back east is a little bait and switch, where the original gets accepted and then the proposals go in to change it. And we call that back east bait and switch. I don't know what you call it on the West Coast, but certainly that's what I call it. Thank you.
Thank you. If you've spoken before in the public hearing section, you have one chance to speak. So if you've spoken in that section, I can't recognize you now. I don't see any other members of the public. Planning Director Hadwin, do you see anybody else who wishes to speak?
I don't see anyone else, and no one else has requested to speak, Chairwoman.
Thank you. You have 3 minutes for rebuttal, and then we'll ask questions of you, Lori.
Thank you. It's difficult to respond to the vitriol and the upset that people are so willing to express, because it's not been my intention ever, nor has it ever been the intention of the development to in any way not consider the neighbors. However, we do have a big project to build, and it has certain requirements, whether people like it or not. The lack of understanding of what it takes to build a project that is in excess of 150, quickly approaching $200 million is hard to convince people. If we want to build a project, we as a developer have to keep responding to what's going on. This project has been stopped by a number of things. First, the recession, then COVID, and now what looks to be another recession. Unfortunately, or fortunately, we did call a public meeting to discuss that we were making these changes. I know David wasn't there, but Lewis and several of the other people who live at Center Court were there. And we did hear some of those issues. I tried to answer the questions as best I could. We were in early planning phase. We cannot reduce the count. And I'm sorry that people don't like it, but the count is essential based on our pro forma to be able to finance this, to move it forward. And I think that without any subsidies from any public entity. We are required to do it purely on the revenue generated from this project, and that is based on how many square feet we have to sell. The project, if you all remember, way back when, started off with 150 units, and it's been reduced down to 60 something currently. So we have tried through the years to continue to respond to what makes sense on the project and still make it a viable project. I don't really, the parking, there was an issue about overflow parking. If somebody would look at the drawings, they would note that we had tandem parking all along the south edge of Center Court. That was in relation, it was all overflow parking. It was approved in the original plan. So I see that David's shaking his head, but in fact, it was in the original plan. So I don't remember the number of count, but there was quite a bit of overflow parking there. Yes, it's all valet, but that was meant for overflow. We had quite a bit of surface parking as guest parking and other things. But the hotel itself and what was original and the tower residences are valet. Trying to think what else. We believe, and we did do studies. I looked up those balloon studies that we did previously, which are all around the same height, 55 feet, and had what they look like. We have moved back. Those studies are now unfortunately invalid because that original building sat right at the street line, which was, I think, 28 feet back from the property line and stood 55 feet. And that was an approved project. This is now, as I said earlier, 80 feet. 86 feet back from Center Court now, which I don't know quite what Center Court is distance, but I do know the road is 26. So we're at least probably 40 feet in addition beyond the road before our condos start. And though in the drawings, it's not clear, the actual buildings are stepped back, and then there are gardens which have enclosed areas around them. That was the intention, was to keep it more airy and to try to make it more appealing from Center Court looking out. The northern condos are looked out on by 4 one-story or 5 one-story units. I suspect that even if we built 2-story units, there would be an issue around view. And so we can address this all day long. I'm happy to try to keep going back and forth about it, but we do believe that we've created angled views in a way that doesn't just tower above them. The condo tower and the hotel tower are the predominant piece of this project, and those aren't changing. Those are what they are, and we've tried to reduce the north and south condos from that height level such that it tiers down to the neighborhood. So I'm happy to answer any questions, and of course the architect is here to answer questions as well.
Are there questions from the commission? Commissioner Hirschbein.
This is for the architect. I'm looking at page A30 3.0N that has the 2 sections, AA and BB. And I was trying to figure out where they were cut, because if I go up to the plan above it, it doesn't reference a section AA or a section BB.
Hi, this is Anil. I'm the architect with AB Design Studio. In the drawing that you're asking about, is the 2 sections are marked, maybe just named. I'm gonna check the drawing that you're talking about. Just 1 second. In the north, they're marked as 2 and 3 on the left-hand side of the site plan. So
AA is 2 and BB is 3?
AA is 2 and yes, BB is 3. That's correct.
Okay, so, all right. And then likewise on the south one, I couldn't find the reference either when I got to the section. 2 and 3, same thing, AA is 2 and BB is 3. Okay.
That's correct.
All right. Well, noted that that was confusing, but thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none, the
Madam
issue.
Madam Chair, may I please take a second to respond to one of the comments made by Mr. Powell regarding the public hearing notices?
Why don't, I'm going to end the public hearing, but why don't I then let you have the floor?
I'm sorry.
The public hearing is ended, but you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to correct one of the assertions made by Mr. Powell that the hearing of 2019 was not noticed. That is inaccurate. I can share the public hearing notices and the vicinity map that were sent. And in fact, I did meet with Mr. Powell on more than one occasion in 2019 before and after those plans came before you. So just wanted to put that on the record that there were public hearing notices mailed to that community back in 2019. Both the Planning Commission hearing notices and the City Council hearing notices were mailed out.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
If I'm incorrect, then I apologize.
Thank you. The matter is before the commission. I'm just going to go around and get a feel for what people are thinking before we discuss. I'm going to start with Commissioner Miller.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Wormick. I have, I guess, the advantage, along perhaps with Commissioner Leyen, of not being here for the original approvals, but perhaps that's also a curse, and to a certain extent. So I have approached this project kind of afresh, as if it was only a couple of months old, even though I have looked back at the history, of course, to advise myself as to what has happened in the past. I appreciate that the developer has responded, albeit neighbors would say in a minuscule way, to their concerns that were addressed 2 weeks ago. But I happen to think that it's enough for this project at this location. The fact that they've reduced both the north villas and the south villas by approximately 6 feet, as well as, I think, better indicating how far away the buildings already are and how stepped the buildings are from the west line of Center Court and the south line of Center Court. I think that those representations have gone a long way in allaying my concerns about the heights that were reflected 2 weeks ago. I also have to look at this as a kind of a balanced routine in terms of what is there today and what is the city looking for in terms of its general plan and its zoning, and how should the city be developing in the future. And I know the Center Court residents aren't going to like to hear this, but the fact that they are only 1 story and slight parts of their development are 2 stories, in and of itself shouldn't drive the development of the future of the city. I think that fact, coupled with the fact that the heights have been reduced and the step backs have been provided in the building, as well as the general distance from the property line of Center Court, for me, represent that this is an appropriate project at this time. And I look forward to this thing moving forward.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Commissioner Elaine, and if you're willing to make comments.
Certainly. I think I've learned a lot between the last meeting and this meeting, and I do want to thank the developer for the level of detail on drawings that they were able to produce in 2 weeks. And I was pretty impressed. It allowed me to get a much better understanding of the articulation of the buildings, and spending more time in the neighborhood over the last week, I was better able to see exactly how it would fit in. I think that what we have here is an example of the tension that always exists when new development comes into an existing neighborhood. Unfortunately, it's magnified in this instance by the fact that the existing neighborhood has been there since 1978. The property owners at Center Court have all been accustomed to having big open spaces beside them. And the truth of the matter is that if you want to control what is developed on a piece of property, you need to own that piece of property. So for the neighborhood to develop expectations that each and every one of their concerns would be addressed and that the developer would acquiesce to them and let their concerns dictate or prevail is, unfortunately, it's naive, and it's I know that it's painful. Nonetheless, I think that what I see here is a developer who has ultimately proposed a responsible development. It is not to the intensity or the height that it could be. It is respectful of the development around it to a reasonable extent. Hearing and reading about the changes that have been made over time in response to neighborhood input is an example of what a responsible developer would do in response to neighborhood input. It is not that they give away the rights to design to the neighbors, but that they develop something that tries to be respectful of what the neighbors are concerned about. I appreciate the fact that the height did come down between the last meeting and this one. As I look at the sight lines, they do measurably change. It may seem like 7 feet is not a significant difference, but when you take a look at the drawings from last time and this time, it does make a difference, and I think that the neighbors will benefit because of that. I am interested in providing or requiring that the developer provide more landscape screening if that is what the neighbors want. It's true that a tree will block your view as much as a building would, but it also could be something more pleasant to look at if you don't want to see the fact that you're in the middle of a city. So I would consider adding some additional conditions for additional landscaping if that is what would help to satisfy the neighbor. I'm a little bit distressed when residents indicate that they have, and I have a quote from earlier on, that they had no input into the process. I believe that the written record shows that there have been many opportunities for input. And this, in fact, is another public hearing at which time anybody is welcome to speak and to give their input. And so I would ask you to reframe your view of what is an opportunity to have input. Public hearings are designed specifically so that neighbors, residents, any interested party can have input. And I think that we've been able to listen to a number of you tonight who have expressed your concerns. So at this point, I certainly lean towards supporting this project because I feel that as far as long-term planning goes for a community, this meets the objectives of the general plan. It meets the letter of the zoning ordinance. It is what is appropriate to be developed in that location, despite the fact it does not meet with all of the desires and wishes of a neighborhood that will admittedly be impacted by this. The end.
Thank you. Commissioner Maruzzi, would you like to go next? Or Commissioner Hirschfein?
I'll go.
Thank you.
I think one of the big issues here is that it's 15 years since this project first seems to have gotten off the ground. And economic conditions have changed over time, and apparently to fund something like this now requires a lot more condominiums than were required in 2007 and in 2017 and then 2019. The city council has approved all of these with the knowledge that there have been substantial changes over time. It's really going to be up to the city council if they think this is acceptable. I mean, I'm not on the council. If I were, I might say, this is just dragged on too long and I'm tired of all the changes. And how do we know that this last one is going to be any different? Because if this gets, the recession's coming and this is going to be dragged out, and then, 3 years from now, we're going to have another request. So we got to just call it a day. Apparently, that's not what's going to happen based on the input we got from our city attorney. There's things going on behind the scenes. So if that is indeed the case, then our moving this forward to them based on the latest presentation, I think would then put it in their court. I mean, if they're comfortable with that and whatever they're doing behind the scenes is consistent with this particular proposal, then they'll approve it. So, I mean, at this stage, I'm in line with my colleagues that I'd like to approve this and move it forward, but I have no idea what the city council is working on behind the scenes, and I don't exactly know what they will think about this dragging out 15 years.
Commissioner Hirschbein.
Yeah, I am really saddened by the process our city is going through and the contortions it's going through to try to get this through the system. After all these years, we're told that we have to hurry up and do this. 2 weeks go by and they drew a red line on a piece of paper. That was the only change to the presentation that I could see. I don't understand the fire that's under us now. And for the public not to see even that drawing until Monday afternoon, being this is Wednesday, something's gnawing at me as to why this is being pushed as hard as it is, as fast as it is. As JR said in the last meeting, this has been going on for years, and if we have to wait to get this right or to get to understand it clearly, then so be it. The other thing that gnaws at me is this idea that there's this secret negotiation going on. That for those of you who've been around Palm Springs for a while, you'll remember how the city got in trouble for that with other developers. And I just don't, frankly, want to be a part of that. And as far as funding or financing, okay, a hotel's difficult to finance. We know that because we have some hotels that have suffered that. We're looking at the shells of some hotels that have suffered that. And I understand that. Well, if it's so difficult to fund a hotel, why not build all housing there if housing is so easy to finance? And make it something that's not sort of an adjunct to an albatross around your neck in terms of funding. And also, I'm not so sure that even putting 64 condos in there is going to allow you to fund a hotel, given that, the difficulties in funding a hotel in the best of circumstances, and B, now that we're moving it to very high interest rates, how that pencils out. I mean, that to me is very problematic. I have a lot of concern about the way this project has been handled and how the city is responding to it.
Thank you. I would have preferred we got back what we asked for, which was the reduction of one layer of condos adjacent to Center Court. That really is what we asked for. We didn't receive that. What we got was 6 feet instead of probably 11 or 12 feet reduction. I thought what we asked for was reasonable. I'm not quite sanguine with the heights that this is at, and that's not, they're allowed. I believe they're allowed within zoning. It's the history of the project that makes it hard for me to say yes, but I'm sensing a majority. And at this point, I would take a motion. Yes.
I would move to approve the final development plans and tentative track map 35236 as outlined in the agenda and staff report for Celine Palm Springs LLC for the Dream Hotel and condominiums.
With the changes that were made today?
With the changes that were made based on the revised plans that show the 6+ foot lowering of both the north and the south villas or condos, as well as the landscape suggestion that Commissioner Layan made regarding whether or not there would be room for additional landscape in the buffer area surrounding center court.
Is there a second for that motion?
I will second it.
Is there discussion?
Chair, is there some way, and I don't know if this will be a friendly amendment or if it's appropriate, I am concerned about Commissioner Hirschbein's comments and about, we heard at the last meeting more that there were negotiations going on that of which we were unaware. And frankly, if they are not long-term land use negotiations, I don't think it's our business. I don't know if it's possible to make our recommendation or to make it clear that this is based upon land use and not based upon either financial or contingent negotiations going on simultaneously.
For my input, I would say that, I mean, what you stated, Commissioner Lane, goes without being stated. Of course, we are only dealing with this from a land use and zoning perspective. What is or is not happening regarding any negotiations that might ultimately need to take place from the city council level, it's somewhat irrelevant to our decision on this application.
You're right. You're right. And I hope that the audience of people that are still watching this understand that we're not involved in and don't know firsthand of anything else that might be going on beyond the records that are public records that you're seeing as well as we are.
For discussion purposes, it's not our purview. Our purview is really limited to a request to make a change in an existing planned development district. And that is what's before us and nothing else.
So the reason I brought that up was I think there's a rush to judgment here. I think poles are an excellent way. We require poles in one-story houses. Now we've got a 4-story house. We all agree that the presentation was subpar. And it, you know, the reason being that they wanted to get this through the system in 2 weeks. And I think those are relevant points of discussion.
Are there comments to that?
Could you call the question, please?
I'm going to make a comment before we call the question. I'm going to vote against this. And it's basically that I don't think a 6-foot reduction is adequate, given the history of the project. I would have liked to see, I appreciate that they made some reduction. I would have liked to see them come back with what we had asked them to do. Going from 25 feet to 45 feet is fairly substantial, given the history of the project. Had one floor been reduced and it gone probably to 39 feet, I could have supported it. I just think that with the history of the project, I would have preferred to see it peeled back, as we asked them to do, by 1 story at the back buildings. So I'm not going to support it, but we can call the question if no one else has comments. Please call the roll.
Who was that? I'm sorry.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Alain,
Yes.
Commissioner Hirschbein,
No.
Commissioner Maruzzi,
Yes.
and Chair Womack.
No. Thank you. And thank you all for that discussion. Moving right along to the city of, we are going to item 2E, which is the last item in our agenda. It's Palm Springs Municipal Code Section 9.62.055 and Palm Springs Zoning Code Section 93.23.21 amendments relative to the development standard for urban lot splits and 2-unit residential developments. Staff report, please.
Madam Chair and members of the commission, as you'll recall, we had a study session back in July to discuss amendments to our regulations for urban lot splits and 2-unit development. We presented the recommendations of our Planning Commission subcommittee at that point, and also discussed with you at that time 3 issues to which the subcommittee was not able to come to resolution. I'm going to poorly attempt to share my screen, so if you'll give me just a few moments to get this arranged and get it correctly. Okay, and then I believe I need to change my screens. Okay, and Madam Chair, can you see the appropriate screen now?
I can, thank you.
Okay. Because of the late hour, I'm going to skip through all of the background. I think you're all aware of why we're here and what we're considering. And let me just go straight ahead to the issues. As I had mentioned, there were 3 issues that the subcommittee was not able to come to agreement. We discussed those at your study session on the 27th, and I would just want to go over those with you this evening to finalize them before we move this on to the City Council with your recommendation. The 3 issues were relative to the maximum permissible unit square footage, the requirements relative to the expansion of any existing dwelling on a site, and then finally, privacy standards for these new lots. Let me discuss the first item, the maximum unit square footage. As is currently in the ordinance, the unit size is limited to no more than 1,000 square feet. You can have 2 of those units on a lot that's created under this ordinance. As you'll recall, the City Council wanted us to look at that limitation with the intent of expanding it to allow for the development of affordable housing or workforce housing that could accommodate families. And so 1,000 square feet obviously is generally not enough to do that. The subcommittee was not able to come to concurrence on that, but at our discussion at Planning Commission, it was determined that we should allow 1,500 square feet as the maximum and 1,000 square feet for any second unit on the parcel. And so what that does is increase the maximum developable square footage on a site from the current 2,000 square feet to 2,500 square feet, and does accomplish the goal of allowing the development of a 3-bedroom house, which could accommodate families. And so that was the first point. Again, the recommendation from the Planning Commission from July was to allow 1,500 feet and 1,000 square feet. The next point is relative to expansion of any existing dwelling on a site. The current ordinance does not allow the expansion of any existing dwelling that is greater than 1,000 square feet. So if there's an existing dwelling on the site as part of an urban lot split that's greater than 1,000 square feet, it could not be expanded at all. In discussing that, the Planning Commission at the meeting of July the 27th, it was determined that the best requirement to put in place is to limit the expansion of any existing dwelling only by setbacks and lot coverage. In looking at the other development standards that we have in place, that should be adequate to cap the expansion of any existing dwelling while still allowing room for a second dwelling on the parcel. The third point of concern was relative to privacy. Currently in the ordinance, there's a rather stringent requirement that any door or window within 30 feet of a side or rear property line has to be either a clerestory window or utilize obscure glass. We weren't able to come to a finalization of what that requirement should be to offer protection to existing adjacent residences. In discussing that at the study session on the 27th of July, what we ultimately came down to is that a 6-foot-high wall or appropriately dense 6-foot-high landscaping would be adequate to buffer adjacent properties. Because we essentially have a 1-story community in our single-family neighborhoods, we're not going to have the issue of 2 stories and worries about lines of sight. And so the direction from the Planning Commission was that language that requires either a wall or 6-foot-high landscaping would be more than adequate. There was a concern because there's language about doors or windows having a direct line of sight. My response to that is the requirement for the wall or landscaping will essentially eliminate any direct line of sight to adjacent properties. Those were the 3 issues and the recommendations that came out of the Planning Commission study session. With that, that concludes my presentation, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you have about these 3 issues or about the ordinance in general. Thank you very much.
Are there comments or questions for staff? I had, Commissioner Miller.
Yeah, question for Flynn on page 10 of the resolution regarding housing occupancy by a tenant. It restricts taking advantage of this proposal if there's been a tenant in the housing for the last 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
That seems pretty restrictive. Is that some standard language that we have in other parts of the code?
Yes, that's existing language that's in the current ordinance, and it comes directly from state law.
Okay.
So there's an interest in tenant protections in place.
That's my only comment or question.
Thank you. I had one question, and I'm sure it's that the committee agreed on it. I was just looking at the landscape requirement of reducing the sizes of landscape to 5 gallons from 15. And with something that's going to be, it's going to stand out in neighborhoods if it's installed at this, it just seems good to me that we beautify it with landscape. And I would like to not have that restriction. I don't know if how other people feel. And we generally require that these parcels have a tree for shade. And both of those I would like to see, but it certainly won't keep me from saying yes to this very good proposal. So I don't know if anybody else agrees with me about the tree or a slightly larger landscape, minimum landscape size, so that the property can be nicely screened and made more acceptable as it comes in.
Yes, absolutely. I understand, and that's an important question to ask. In looking at the landscape requirements in the ordinance, it requires landscaping based on the linear footage of the residence that's being constructed. What this will entail is that, you know, a 1,200 square foot house or a 1,500 square foot house will require upwards of about 50 to 60 plants. And so when you have that many plants that you're working with, one of the things that we discussed in the subcommittee is that it's nice to have a variety of scale and of size of plants. In certain cases, you're going to want some lower plants as foundation plantings. In other places, you're going to want taller plants. And particularly as we look at the privacy requirements, wherever you have windows facing a common property line, there will be a requirement that they have to have 6 foot high plantings to adequately screen the new residents. And so by virtue of those two things, the number of plants required, and then also the privacy requirements, you will, I believe, naturally get a variety of sizes of plants. If we would like to make it more specific to state that, you know, at least 3 or 4 of the required plants must be, you know, 24-inch box trees or 15-gallon trees, I think we could make that adjustment to it if everyone else is comfortable with that. But generally speaking, I think having the ability to do both 5-gallon plants, in addition to some of the plants, the larger plants that will be required for screening, is a good thing in giving variety to the landscaping on the site.
Does I'm perfectly fine with that. Does anybody else feel comfortable with adding trees? I would like to do that just for shade. I'm seeing a yes from Commissioner Hirschbein. And I'm seeing a yes from a comment from Commissioner Miller.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think we could, it'd be nice to put in a little more language that required some variety of sizes. I was involved in the discussion of going from 15 gallons to 5 gallons initially, in that the 15-gallon is a pretty substantial size plant. And I thought it might have been a little bit of overkill to do a complete hedge of 15-gallon plant material. But I do like the idea of providing some variety through the 24-inch box tree and such. So I support that.
Flynn, do you want to craft a amendment or condition?
Yeah, if you'll give me just a little bit of time as we take public testimony, that might be helpful. Madam Chair, I forgot one other thing.
I forgot, we are in public hearing. I was thinking that this was, my apologies. I was thinking it was a discussion with staff. We are, are there any other questions of staff?
Madam Chair, may I just make one comment? I need to make a correction. In the draft ordinance relative to the maximum square footage, I need to correct the language there to say the first primary residence and the second primary residence. And so I will just do that as part of your motion this evening. It's one of the things that the city attorney requested that I do to clarify that issue. And so I just wanted to point that out and enter that change into the record. And with that, Madam Chair, I'll turn it back to you and opening the public hearing.
And as the city is the applicant and you've already given a report, I'm opening this to members of the public who would wish to speak. Are there members of the public who would wish to speak? Yes.
Yes, Madam Chair. Thank you. I'm Mark Tarrin. Madam Chair, members of the commission, thank you for the opportunity to address you. The working subcommittee, I think, knows me well. I've had the opportunity to participate in a number of those sessions, and Flynn has been incredibly helpful. By way of background, I own a parcel in Warm Sands that I plan to develop as my primary residence in Palm Springs. So I'm pretty excited about the ordinance and that opportunity. I grew up in a family of real estate developers in Northern California who specialized in building duplexes. So I kind of feel like at this point I'm uniquely qualified in this area. The thing I think that has excited me most, I'm on the Historic Preservation Commission in a city that has not embraced this ordinance, is that the City Council and the Planning Commission embrace this in a way that I think is quite extraordinary. And the commitment to allow for the development of homes of a size that really would allow for a small family and for a second unit of at least 2 rooms, I think is really forward thinking. I know there's a lot of concern in terms of thinking about how to establish maximum sizes and other things. To a large degree, when you're dealing with smaller lot sizes, as I've looked at this for the development of my own parcel, the parcels almost become self-limiting in a way, because as you apply the lot area coverage ratios and you apply the setback requirements and other things, since there is no relief offered in this ordinance to any of those setback requirements, in many levels, the smaller parcels won't support the ability to build the 1,500 square foot and the 1,000 square foot unit. I think you have to get up to about a 5,500 square foot lot before you're able to meet that at the 45% lot coverage. And so when I was looking through everything, in the last draft of the ordinance I saw, I hadn't really gone to read it through in detail, because in the summaries in the staff report and the summaries of the changes, everything that was listed there exactly met all of the modifications that I had heard through prior meetings. But in reading the ordinance, I just have a concern in one area, because I think it works against the goal of the commission and the goal of the city council. And this is the provision in E10D under unit standards. And that's the area of relief from the lot area coverage ratio. It had previously allowed for relief to assure that you were able to develop a primary and secondary unit of at least 1,000 feet each. And I guess in the work session, and I was not able to listen to that, and the recordings for the work sessions or the study sessions aren't maintained. With that being reduced to 800 feet, for lots kind of in the under 5,500 square foot level, which probably is what I'm facing in dividing what is effectively an infill lot, you can't get to build a property that meets the ability to have a large enough unit for a family. But at 2,000 square feet, you effectively could have a 1,200 square foot 3-bedroom and an 800 square foot 2-bedroom. They'd both be small, but they'd be comfortable, and that would work. But if you get down to only the allowance for relief to get to 1,600 feet, effectively you've built a 2-bedroom house and a 1-bedroom secondary unit, and you really lose the opportunity to take advantage of what I think the code that you've established created. The other element of this is, as a homeowner that would be utilizing the ordinance, the economics of building under SB 9 without the ability to build a home for your family, without the ability to build a 3-bedroom home and a 2-bedroom a secondary unit or ADU, I think makes the viability of any projects very difficult. And so I think the work that's been done is absolutely phenomenal. I really do. And I'm really excited. The only thing that I would ask is that you would reconsider the change in E10D unit standards that changed the relief allowed for lot area coverage from the 800 feet back to an allowance for either 1,000 feet per unit, or what I think would be more ideal, since you've differentiated the sizes of the primary unit and the second unit at 15 and 1,000, I think the allowance for a 1,200 square foot unit and an 800 square foot unit. So going back to that combined 2,000 feet that the ordinance currently states would allow you to accomplish the goal. And the difference in lot area coverage to accomplish that really only moves from 45% to 55%. And I did a quick calculation of what would happen on my lot if I had built using the existing zoning and added an allowable ADU, and that gets to 55% as well. So the lot area coverage ratio really isn't different than what the current code would allow. It just happens that it's on a smaller property, but overall massing, setbacks, et cetera, don't really change. So I hope that's not too long-winded, but I just really wanted to point out that I think that this one provision is extremely limiting and will really impact the ability to complete a project on an infill lot. So thank you for the opportunity. I'm happy to answer any questions if they come up. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak? This is very helpful testimony. I'm wondering if anybody would like to ask any questions of Mr. Turin.
I don't want to ask any questions. I'd like to understand. I didn't quite understand it. And I would like Mr. Fagg to actually see how he responds to this suggestion.
I'll go ahead and respond to the.
At this point, the public hearing is closed. Flynn, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and respond to the question. Essentially, what it is about is the ability to reduce setbacks or increase lot coverage in order to develop 2 units on the property. As Mr. Chairman has indicated, we had dropped that threshold in order to reduce setbacks or increase lot coverage from 1,000 square feet, which is what City Council had originally approved back in January, to 800 square feet. I quite honestly don't know that it makes a difference. In fact, if we bump that back to 1,000 square feet, I think we're fine. I don't think that we'll have any significant impacts to adjacent properties in that regard. So the suggestion made by Mr. Tarrant, I think, is acceptable, and more than happy to accommodate that.
How would you change the language?
I would just, in the strikeout underlined version, you'll see in subsection E that he's mentioning, it currently has 1,000 square feet crossed out and 800 square feet underlined. It's just a matter of going back to the original language about 1,000 square feet. So it's a very simple change to make.
So are there comments, Commissioner Miller?
Just a question for Flynn. Does that only affect the item that Mr. Tarrant specifically referenced, D, or would it also apply to C2 where it talks about 800 square feet?
I would modify both of those to say 1,000 square feet. So it's basically just taking that language throughout the ordinance and bumping it back to 1,000 square feet where it occurs.
So basically what you're saying is, regardless of existing setback and lot coverage requirements, those are waived in order to get to a minimum of 1,000 square feet.
Correct. That's the only instance where you would be able to waive that.
Got it. I'm okay with that.
What I'm seeing are head nods and that everyone here is okay with that. Is there any other discussion or any questions? I think this is terrific. I'm glad. I really want to thank the subcommittee that worked on it. I would take a proposal that takes both changes that we discussed. If someone would like to make a motion? Maybe a member,
Before a motion is made, Madam Chair, just going back to your question about the landscaping, I've got two alternates to consider as Mr. Taryn was making his comments. In looking at the language under landscaping, it says at least one 5-gallon size plant shall be provided for every 5 linear feet of exterior wall. And then it says, excuse me, alternatively, at least one 24-inch size box plant shall be provided for every 10 linear feet of exterior wall. We could add another sentence on to that paragraph stating that a minimum of X number of 24-inch box trees shall be provided for each lot created under this ordinance. I would suggest anywhere from 2 to 4 trees as a minimum. And so that's one way that we could do that. And I see 2 fingers raised.
is that 2 fingers for 2 trees, Michael?
That was 2 fingers for the second piece of that.
Okay.
The tree, the box trees.
Okay. But in terms of the number of box trees that we would require for each lot?
Yeah, I think 2. I don't, when we get to like Miralon or one of these merchant built tracks, we don't require more than 1. So we're doubling it.
I think 2 is appropriate. If you start getting more than that on a small lot or when you've got lot coverage, you're not going to get full development into nice shade trees. I think 2 is the right number.
Okay.
Yeah,
so if the commission agrees, we can add that language on to the final part of that paragraph.
And you had the change that our city attorney required regarding the first and second primary residences. We have the change to item, you'll have to tell me the item numbers. There were 2 we're changing to 1,000 square feet.
Apologize. I've got this on my screen here and it's a little bit small. It's under subsection E, setbacks, and it's subparagraph 2, and as it appears elsewhere throughout the document. So in the motion, we'll word it that way.
Okay, and I think it might be nice if someone who was on the subcommittee made the motion and seconded it, because it's your good work that is coming before us. Commissioner Ritzy?
No, it should be Michael or Scott.
I'll move approval of the provisions dealing with SB 9 pursuant to the discussion tonight, including the revisions as outlined by Flynn regarding the city attorney changes to primary first and primary second units, as well as the changes jumping up from 800 square feet to 1,000 square feet, as well as the addition of the language regarding a minimum of 2 24-inch box trees for the landscaping.
I'll second that.
And just for discussion purposes, there was an article recently, I think the last couple of days in the New York Times, about there being no more starter homes built. And we really, the need for starter homes, smaller homes that are in the 1,000, 1,200, 1,500 square foot size. So I'm thrilled that we're doing this. Can you call the roll, please?
Yes.
Second was, is Commissioner Hirschman, correct?
Yes. Yes, and
Commissioner
yes.
Land?
Yes.
Commissioner Maruzzi?
Yes.
Chair Womack?
Yes.
Project is approved. Did I miss someone there?
No, we've had 2 members. We have 2
are
members
excused.
absent.
Okay.
Madam Chair, before we move on to the next item, it was brought to my attention that we didn't read into the record the result of the vote on the prior item 2D Saline Palm Springs. So if you don't mind, if we could just go back and just record that approval. Terry, are you able to read that vote into the record for item 2E? I'm sorry, 2D.
Separate notes here. We had, this is for the Dream Hotel.
Correct.
So we had a motion by Commissioner Miller, second by Commissioner Alain. The vote was three in favor and 2 opposed. The
Thank you.
motion Approved.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Terry.
Moving right along to Planning Commission reports, requests, and comments.
If we get an action on 2F, we do need to get that continued to a date certain.
Oh,
yes, thank you.
Move to continue to a date certain.
Thank you. And the date certain is?
October 12th.
Fill in the blank.
Is there a second?
October 12th.
Commissioner Miller just seconded that. All in favor?
But under discussion, I thought I wrote down on my agenda that we had approved that 6-0 at the beginning. So you might want to look back at the record, but we can certainly redo it. But we're only going to get 5-0, but that's fine.
We did approve it when we did the agenda.
I thought so.
That's right. Apologies.
I thought so.
Yeah. I think I pulled us out of order, but yes.
That was a long time ago.
Many hours.
Commissioner Miller, have you been paying attention to what we're doing again?
I have, I'm sorry.
Okay, new business. There is none. Planning Commission reports, requests, and comments. I just had a comment. I had asked what the council was doing with appointments, and was told that appointments are paused at this point in time. And that covers both new appointments to the commission, as well as our making appointments to the Architectural Review Board. So those are paused. And the other question that I had asked was regarding the election of the chair and the vice chair for this commission. And apparently that's paused until they begin to make new appointments. So
if I could just, I may just catch up with Flynn on that item a bit more to get additional clarity, but I think your understanding is correct, Madam Chair, and I can update the commission if I get additional guidance.
Are there any other reports, requests, or comments? I had one, and it's in the future, and I just began to talk with our new director about it. We had talked quite a while ago about trying to work with sustainability on the issue of urban trees. But I've been thinking the issue is much broader, and it's a question of urban heat and ways of reducing urban heat. And it is something that I would like us at some point to begin to work with the Sustainability Commission on some review of both standards for trees, interesting ways that our code might be changed so that we can reduce heat, and innovative technologies to reduce heat in the city. Most of the sustainability work that's been done to date has really focused on reducing the causes of climate change. But I do think we're at a point where we've experienced hot enough summers that we might also want to think about ameliorating the effects of climate change and working on that with other commissions to see what we might be able to recommend to the city. And really good work is being done on this in Phoenix. It's something that I'd like us, I just want to throw it out tonight and see, and probably have a later discussion on it to see if it's something the commission might like to work on.
I would.
I know, and Commissioner Maruzzi said yes. I know I would, or I'd like to, either I would or I'd like to see us work on it.
I agree.
It's a big deal.
Yes. I lost a grandfather to a heat wave, probably in the way back in the 70s. And it's amazing to me that the issue is so much more intense now. So maybe we can plan to take that up as a discussion at a future meeting. Is there a planning director's report?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have no updates tonight. I think we've covered a lot and nothing new to report from our last meeting. Thank you.
Thank you all for tonight's meeting. It was a good meeting.
Good night.
And
Good night.
We are adjourned until October 12th, 5:30.
Thank you.
Thank you.